Chapter 1458. The light of the multi-dimensional sky opening transportation device faded from his sight, and the scene outside the portholes of the player battleships had already turned into an incomparably vast green world. The enormous world tree stood in the distance, and the endless world tree fleet surrounded it like a green sea of light. The distribution of the world tree troops appeared in front of them. It was as if they covered every inch of space, and it was extremely strict. It was enough to arouse the fear of ordinary people and make their scalps go numb. Countless shipborne weapons adjusted their cannons at the same time and aimed at the direction where the players appeared. They could spit out endless firepower at any time and smash the invaders into pieces. It was as if they could smell the thick aura of death, but the players were not afraid at all. Instead, their blood boiled, and a trembling fanaticism surged in their chests. Ha ha! Little trees, you have such a day too. Brothers, charge! For the tribe. The sacred forum is connected to us. Wahaha die for me. Tens of millions of players shouted excitedly and dispersed. Batches of warships that had arrived through teleportation split up without any hesitation. They scattered like sparks in the sky and charged in all directions like a group of happy huskies. Fire. Following the ancestral tree king's brazen order, countless cannons suddenly fired, forming a tsunami of light cannons that had almost no gaps. A wave slammed down, instantly shattering a large number of players along with their shields and ships, turning them all into dust. In just a single exchange, the player fleet suffered huge casualties. However, a portion of the multi-dimensional sky opening transportation devices operated in groups, forming a teleportation chain that operated all day long. New troops were teleported out every moment, and the remaining multi-dimensional sky opening transportation devices operated in groups, specifically responsible for large-scale deployment. The two teleportation methods worked together to ensure that there would be no shortage of troops at the front line. A large number of players died in battle, and new players continued to enter, bringing back detailed information about the World Tree's main dimension. Due to the restriction of information communication, it was difficult for normal scouting troops to send information to the headquarters, and the players who could revive are the most unrestricted intelligence agents. The firepower of the World Tree Army was endless, blasting the enemy's ships into fireworks. However, at this moment, the players suddenly stopped teleporting and were replaced by densely packed keys of destruction. Shield. The roars of all levels of commanders sounded in the World Tree's mental network, and the outermost defense circle immediately activated its countermeasures. Space extended, lengthening the distance, turning into a deep area used to buffer the bombardment. It was the Lerbo Space Protection Belt. The next moment, the batches of keys of destruction that had been thrown over burst forth with blinding light, as if hundreds of thousands of suns had risen. Violent energy poured out like a flood that had been opened. Boom, 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 boom. The high-density energy reaction caused the space to distort. The source of the explosion seemed to have become a singularity. The surrounding space and time collapsed, showing a vortex-like spatial fold. Radiance that seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth burst forth, spreading rapidly. It only slowed down after entering the Lerbo Space Protection Belt, like a wave rolling onto a beach, gradually slowing down. In the end, it barely touched the anti-bombing giant shield of the outer defense circle, exploding with strong electric arcs, leaving large cracks on the shield. The cleansing of the keys of destruction was repeated many times, and most of its power was reduced by the space protection belt. The remaining power shattered the layers of protective shields, causing considerable damage to the World Tree fleet in the outermost defense circle. However, the maintenance fleet penetrated the position and kept repairing the shield, causing the effect of the keys of destruction's bombardment to stop at the outer defense circle. If it was an ordinary secondary dimension, it would have long burst from the inside under the energy explosion of this level. However, the toughness of the World Tree's main dimension far exceeded common sense, and the strength of its space was even greater than that of the main universe. Furthermore, It was reinforced by the World Tree fleet with a large number of space devices, making it extremely sturdy. The players explored the path and used the keys of destruction to cleanse the ground several times, scraping off the World Tree battleships one after another. The battleships further inside kept moving forward to fill in the gaps and maintain a shield. One side was being bombarded, while the other side was defending. After another batch of keys of destruction exploded, the official troops of the Galactic Alliance Army finally arrived, wave after wave. Due to the limitations of the teleportation efficiency, the mission of the Vanguard troops was to withstand the attacks of the World Tree and buy time for the follow-up troops. They would allow the multi-dimensional sky opening transportation device to continuously release troops until there were enough troops present. The first phase of the mission would be considered a success, and only then would they be able to enter the next phase of the large-scale battle. The Galactic Alliance Army that was present immediately took action. The division of labor was clear. The engineering team established a position and built a space gate. They wanted to connect to the main universe and add new channels for troops to be deployed. The guards surrounded the area, preparing to defend against the World Tree's attack. The mission of harassing and attacking was temporarily handed over to the Space-Time Splicing Suicide Squad. The Lerbo Space Protection Belt was used as a depth zone to lengthen the space distance and separate the two sides. As a result, the Galactic Alliance Army needed to travel for a long time to pass through this area and reach the outermost defense circle of the World Tree. However, on the other hand, if the World Tree wanted to attack the Galactic Alliance Army, it did not need to travel through the Lerbo Space Protection Belt and could directly teleport. This was because this was the main dimension of the World Tree, and it had the function of the World Tree Express. All the members of the World Tree had the ability to quickly teleport here and could appear in any corner at any time. The World Tree civilization had the home ground advantage here, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. The next moment, green lights flashed, and batches of the World Tree's mobile fleets appeared, directly crossing the Lerbo Space Protection Belt. Looking at the dense army of the three universal civilizations outside the window, the countless World Tree soldiers looked as if they were facing death. The mental network was filled with tragic emotions. Although their thoughts were controlled by the World Tree, the members of the World Tree still had their own consciousness and treated the World Tree as a totem. They only had one thought left, and that was to repel the counterattack of the three universal civilizations at all costs. For the Mother Tree, kill all the enemies. The World Tree soldiers let out shrill battle cries and controlled their battleships to attack. Stop them. The officers of the Galactic Alliance Army also roared and gave orders. One side was filled with the anger of avenging their compatriots, while the other side was filled with the determination to fight to the death. The strong collective consciousness clashed and entangled into a mental undercurrent that wreaked havoc on the entire battlefield. Countless people felt like they were seeing two giant beasts biting each other. Then, the military formation of both sides collided. In an instant, it was as if the sky was collapsing. As soon as they exchanged blows, the situation was one-sided. Due to the huge difference in strength, the World Tree fleet quickly gained the upper hand and broke through the Galactic Alliance Army's formation on a large scale. The vanguard of the Galactic Alliance Army struggled to hold on. The pressure did not only come from the huge number of enemy troops stationed in the main body dimension, but also from the harassment of the World Tree's main body. Every time the fresh troops of the Galactic Alliance Army were teleported to the battlefield, spatial rifts would appear around them, and densely packed World Tree roots would extend out and attack their army formation, shattering starships one after another. In the main body dimension, the Mother Tree's consciousness could control the World Tree roots to block the enemy. Its lethality might not be strong, but it was definitely a sharp method to disrupt the battle. The special technology troops of the World Tree and the Galactic Alliance Army did not rest either. Sometimes they used genetic bombs, sometimes they used dimensional space weapons, and sometimes they used network viruses. All kinds of technologies were displayed one after another. They fought back and forth and countered each other's moves. Batch after batch of fleets were sacrificed, and more troops were teleported over. The number of troops increased and decreased like a roller coaster, but the overall trend was still rising. The speed of the battle losses was not as fast as the speed of the multidimensional sky opening transportation device. The armies of both sides fought fiercely, and the battlefield was extremely chaotic. Their formations were intertwined, and they fought head-on. There were millions of casualties every second, and the number of sacrifices was being refreshed at a terrifying speed. Attack, attack! We can't let the enemy tarnish the mother tree. Fanatical fighting spirits spread through the mental network, infecting all the members of the World Tree. However, no matter how agitated they were, they could not decide the direction of the battle. The two sides had been fighting for a long time, and the Galactic Alliance army had already passed the most dangerous initial stage. At this moment, the troops present had already reached a certain scale, and they gradually got rid of the disadvantage and began to fight against the World Tree fleet. In the chaotic battlefield, a World Tree mobile battleship nimbly shuttled through the barrage of bullets, teleporting from time to time to dodge the attacks that had no blind spots. It kept shooting out a series of light energy missiles, shattering the enemy ships like whips. The pilot gritted his teeth, and his eyes were bloodshot. As they approached a Galactic Alliance Army combat team, the firepower covered them. The pilot immediately activated teleportation, and the entire spaceship disappeared from the spot, dodging a round of firepower. The next moment, his spaceship appeared in the center of this team. The pilot did not hesitate to remove the limiter of the reactor, turning the entire spaceship into a large bomb, wanting to self-destruct and eliminate this group of enemy teams. However, at this moment, an invisible force field suddenly pressed down, crushing his spaceship into dust. His furious bellow that he had yet to let out was suppressed into nothingness. In the growing army formation of the Galactic Alliance Army, hundreds of beyond grade as appeared together, and justice descended from the heavens, instantly destroying a large number of World Tree troops that were attacking. An enormous mechanical deity was also exposed in front of both sides, emitting transcendent grade energy fluctuations. It was Han Zhao's supreme heavenly venerate, and its strong presence instantly attracted the attention of all the soldiers and officers on both sides. The members of the World Tree already had a psychological shadow over Han Zhao, and countless people felt a chill in their hearts. On the other hand, the soldiers of the Galactic Alliance Army were overjoyed. Attention! The Beyond Grade A Association has moved out. The official counterattack. The entrance of the high-level combatants was a signal, which meant that the strategy had entered the second stage, from defense to offense. The Galactic Alliance Army had accumulated enough troops and no longer focused on defense. They finally launched a fierce counterattack, charging toward the World Tree's main body from all directions. The Lurbo Space Protection Belt can stop them for a long time. The enemy won't be able to break into our official defense circle for a while. We can use the deeper areas to deal more damage to them. Seeing this, the same thought flashed through the minds of the World Tree members, but the next moment, their expressions changed. Han Zhao's supreme heavenly venerate raised his arm and clenched it in the direction of the World Tree Fleet's defense circle. A strange spatial fluctuation was released, instantly covering the Lurbo Space Protection Belt. The next moment, the Lurbo Space Protection Belt quickly lost its effect, and the extended space quickly shrank back to normal. However, that was not all. Originally, even if the Lurbo Space Protection Belt had lost its effect, there was still a distance between the two armies. However, with the sudden contraction, the large army of the Galactic Alliance Army was right in front of the defense circle in the blink of an eye. There was no need to waste time on the road. The universal treasure technology provided by the St. Tyrical's race, the Space Constant Debugger, had already been improved by Han Zhao. Once it was used, it shone brilliantly, and the effect of the Lurbo Space Protection Belt was directly neutralized. The shortening of space was extremely helpful to the Galactic Alliance Army, and the World Tree Civilization's expression changed. Follow me. After doing this, Han Zhao spun the Emperor's Sky Splitter Blade, and the enormous supreme heavenly venerate mechanical body charged forward, tearing apart the World Tree Fleet's formation. Psionic waves splashed out like they were worthless, paralyzing the enemy ships one after another. The Beyond Grade as followed closely behind with solemn expressions, continuing to deal the finishing blow. Everyone seemed to have formed a sharp blade that stabbed into the World Tree's defense circle. Wherever they passed, the World Tree battleships exploded. Such an arrogant advance immediately encountered the large-scale focus fire of the World Tree Fleet, and the Galactic Alliance Army fearlessly protected them from the side, providing cover. Just as Han Xiao was about to pierce through the outermost layer of defense, another transcendent grade fluctuation suddenly descended and swept through the entire place like a hurricane. The Ancestral Tree King had already abandoned himself and burned the Beyonder's vestige in his inventory to activate the Tree God's descent. If there was no transcendent like Black Star among the enemies, the Ancestral Tree King would still have room to maneuver. He could use the information form rebirth mechanism of the Tree God to make the World Tree look defeated on the surface, but in reality, it would be reborn elsewhere and return to the dark to recuperate. However, in front of the transcendent grade information form obliteration, this path was no longer possible. Furthermore, as long as the pivotal snake was not destroyed, the World Tree would have nowhere to hide. The Ancestral Tree King no longer had a way out. At this moment, the Tree God, who was only driven by instinct, led the remaining high-level combatants of the World Tree to face Han Xiao and the others head-on. All of them erupted with a tragic fighting spirit. Even if I die in battle, I won't let you pass. Kill. Now that the enemies had met, there was no need for any unnecessary words. Bang! Without any hesitation, Han Xiao charged into the Tree God's arms and stabbed him with his knife, forcing the Tree God to run. The two enormous transcendent grade supers were entangled together and rolled in the battle formation, crushing the starships that filled the sky. End of this chapter. Chapter 1459. The Emperor's Skysplitter blade spun like a wheel of light in the hands of the supreme heavenly venerate, shooting out countless dark blue high-density psionic energy light blades, shattering all the starships and mechanical suits along the way. A blank area was drawn out in the dense defensive formation, leaving behind light traces. The light blades slashed on the Tree God's body one after another, and the knotted tree roots were cut in half cleanly. However, buds quickly grew out from the broken parts and repaired the wounds. Mechanical force surged, buffing the Black Mech Legion. It was like a black and gold thundercloud, entangling with the green energy tsunami created by the Tree God, causing explosions to occur around the two giants. Buzz! The two of them released their inner spaces at the same time. The lightning-filled, grayish-blue void domain collided with the green tree god domain and squeezed toward each other. They rubbed back and forth like tofu, triggering dazzling electric arcs. During this process, the bodies of Han Xiao and the tree god expanded endlessly. They rolled and tangled together, colliding more than 1,000 times in an instant. The shockwaves sent all the spaceships flying. This was not the first time the two of them had fought. The tree god was still in an irrational and incomplete state, but Han Xiao could clearly feel that the tree god's strength had increased by a lot. It was not as easy to deal with as last time, especially when the strength of the tree god domain had increased greatly, making him feel a little pressured. The closer he was to the mother tree's main body, the stronger the tree god's strength became. Especially when he was in the World Tree's main body dimension, the tree god's ability was enhanced, and it also had the ability to teleport without a cooldown. It was extremely agile, and the most disgusting thing was that its tankiness was also astonishing. Even Han Xiao found it troublesome. Under the strengthening of various factors, the tree god actually managed to stop Han Xiao's advance for a while. It even forced Han Xiao to retreat and stay away from the mother tree's main body. Looks like it won't be so easy to deal with this guy, Han Xiao thought to himself. As expected, he had long expected the tree god to be strengthened in the main body dimension, so he was not surprised. His advance was blocked, But he was not in a hurry at all. He calmed down and fought the tree god, waiting for his various talents to take effect and continue to increase his combat strength. The last time he extracted the power of the tree god, he had obtained some obscure information. He guessed that the enemy had to pay a huge price to summon the tree god, and it was not a long-term method. Therefore, Han Xiao was not in a hurry to succeed. In his opinion, as long as he dragged it into a protracted battle, the tree god would weaken sooner or later. If not for the fact that they had reached the world tree's hometown, he reckoned that the ancestral tree king would not have been willing to use this move to stop him. While the two transcendent grade supers were fighting, the beyond grade, as on both sides, also met on a narrow path. The new and old grudges were extremely red, and the battle was out of control. All the beyond grade A mechanics temporarily put aside their personal grudges, and the Mech Legion formed a formation, pouring down ferocious firepower. The magicians summoned their respective magician towers and connected them to each other, establishing large-scale magic circuits. Like a mobile base, they continuously released all kinds of large-scale offensive forbidden spells in all directions. The mechanical gods wreaked havoc on the battlefield one after another. Manison's silver-white mechanical body waved its trident and swept through a large area. The indestructible mechanical soldiers stood guard beside it, looking majestic. Herberlin finally had a chance to take revenge. He went on a killing spree, tearing apart the world tree roots that were dancing chaotically, letting out a silent roar. On the other side, ES God and his dozens of doppelgangers moved through the battlefield, toying with many world tree experts with their various Esper abilities. Not far away, Evans activated his energy control Esper ability with all his might, gathering all kinds of energy accumulated on the battlefield and smashing it at the world tree fleet. The destructive power was quite impressive. Hela's expression was stern as she controlled the red tide of death, raising waves after waves that devoured the enemy's ships. Aurora had a solemn expression on her face as she emitted a vigorous vitality. She kept treating her injured teammates and summoning a large number of hero spirits to join the battlefield from time to time. Kasuyi burned an infinite amount of mana, and his psychic energy surged endlessly, shattering the thoughts of countless world tree-blessed race members. In another area, Fu Ding held the Soul Swapper in his hand and strolled around the battlefield. The surrounding battlefield became a forbidden zone for life, and the souls of all the enemies were crushed into pieces. The pugilists no longer fought alone, but formed a formation. Serene, Mercer, Heber, Vuru, China, Kohler, and the others launched a collective charge, turning the defense circle of the world tree fleet upside down. Their punches were continuous, and Euler's voice resounded throughout the dimension. Carrot was also among them. He drove Ing and sped through the rain of light, smashing enemy ships one after another. Quantum Demon Spirit Judith, Guardian Romo, Mechanical Queen Morniza, and the others launched waves of data attacks in the virtual network. Military Flag, Enid activated her ability, and an encouraging halo enveloped her entire team. Together with Aurora, she strengthened the overall strength of the Beyond Grade S. Due to the invasion of the Galactic Society some time ago, many of the high-level combatants of the World Tree civilization had died and had yet to revive. At that time, they did not expect to be counterattacked by the three universal civilizations so quickly. Now, this weakness had become a pit, causing the scale of their high-level combatants to be far inferior to the three universal civilizations. Therefore, not long after the battle began, the Beyond Grade as of the three universal civilizations displayed their abilities and beat the World Tree experts until they bled. One after another, the Holy Tree emissaries and ancestral spirits died in battle with bloodshot eyes with intense unwillingness. The high-level combatants were the sharp blades, and they advanced the deepest. In other directions, the armies of the three universal civilizations were also attacking the World Tree's defense circle. The battlefronts were in a stalemate, moving back and forth. The situation is in our favor now. The longer the battle lasts, the more troops we will send in. The pressure on the World Tree will continue to increase. They won't be able to defend the battlefront forever. In the Strategic Command Center, all the upper echelons were gathered together, looking at the real-time battle situation on the virtual strategic sandbox. The atmosphere was solemn and tense. Simon placed his hands on the table, his eyes as sharp as a falcon's as he said with a deep voice, "I have roughly divided the World Tree's defense circle into 5 layers. Our main force is fighting at the outermost layer, and the beyond grade as have entered the 2nd layer. Black Star was about to enter the 3rd layer, but he was entangled by the other party's transcendent grade and was forced back to the 2nd layer. The World Tree civilization is also going all out. It seems like it will be difficult for us to penetrate the enemy's defense circle in a short period of time," an officer said. Simon nodded in agreement. His tone was solemn. "If we exhaust the World Tree's forces at the outermost layer, the troops inside will come out to reinforce the defense. Furthermore, because the World Tree fleet can teleport without restrictions in this space, we won't be able to break out of the encirclement in the normal sense. We will either have to force the enemy into the hinterland or defeat the enemy's army. Therefore, before both sides are exhausted to a certain extent, it is basically impossible for our main force to open the situation." Everyone's expressions were solemn. They all understood what he meant. This was a bloody and protracted battle, and the casualties would be astronomical. As the attacker, we have the initiative. We have the advantage in the short term, but in the long term, our prospects in a protracted battle are actually not good. Simon paused for a moment and pondered. The speed at which our troops are replenished is far inferior to the World Tree. The World Tree is producing troops every minute and every second. They will be transformed from the roots and can immediately return to the battlefield. Although we can use the weight-increasing tactic to continuously increase the pressure on the World Tree, if the stalemate continues for a long time, the situation will probably turn around when all our troops are deployed. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. This situation was not impossible. If the World Tree civilization really erupted with astonishing tenacity and withstood their continuously increasing attacks, then at a certain point in time, their attacks would weaken. No matter how much advantage they had accumulated previously, it would all be taken back. At this moment, Simon changed the topic and pointed at Black Star in the strategic sandbox. "We can't count on the victory of the main force for the time being. The ones most likely to break the stalemate are the beyond grade as. With Black Star leading the way, as long as they can get rid of the obstruction of the enemy's high-level combatants, they will be able to advance quickly. They are the breakthrough of this battle, and they might be able to affect the outcome of this war." All the officers present and the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations nodded. Although Black Star did not seem like he would be able to get rid of the tree god anytime soon, after experiencing so many things, everyone had strong confidence in him and had high hopes for him. Bang! 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 The 2 transcendent grade supers, one black and one green, clashed countless times. As various talents were activated, Han Zhao's attributes increased bit by bit, and he gradually suppressed the tree god. Because the tree god had an extremely high absorption rate against energy attacks, Han Zhao basically used physical attacks to deal with him. The black torrent formed by mechanical particles took on all kinds of forms, leaving wounds on the tree god's body. Very soon, Han Zhao began to push forward again with an unstoppable momentum. The tree god hurriedly released world tree roots to wrap around him, trying to stall the supreme heavenly venerate. However, these roots were all torn apart by Han Zhao and crushed into powder. In an incomplete state without rationality, you can only rely on your instincts to fight. You can't fully unleash your strength. What a pity. Han Zhao's blade spun and cut off the tree god's head. Seeing the tree god's head quickly regenerate, he shook his head. However, at this moment, the tree god suddenly trembled, and his beast-like chaotic emotions disappeared. For the first time, a clear mental thought was sent over. It was the consciousness of the ancestral tree king. "Black Star, don't even think about getting past me." You've regained consciousness?" Han Zhao raised his brows. He was curious about what method the ancestral tree king had used to regain his rationality and take over the control of the tree god. Just as the ancestral tree king took over the tree god's body, the tree god's combat style immediately changed. Its fighting style was no longer as rough as before, and there were a lot of details. Although its strength did not increase, the actual combat strength displayed by the tree god had increased significantly. It was almost like a different person. At this moment, in the inner space of the tree god, the illusory figure of the ancestral tree king floated there. His senses were connected to the vision of the tree god, and he stared at Han Xiao with a determined expression. Until just now, the ancestral tree king was still trapped in the consciousness of the tree god. However, the world tree finally realized that a calamity was about to befall it. The will of the mother tree descended and woke the ancestral tree king up alone. It also took back the tree king crowns of the fortitude tree king and the subduing tree king and handed them all to the ancestral tree king. The meaning was clear. The ancestral tree king was going to fight alone. This was something the world tree had learned from the process of the tree kings breaking through to the transcendent grade. Burning the foundation of the ancestral tree king's information form allowed him to enter a state similar to when he was advancing to the transcendent grade, but he was still under the control of the world tree. This way, the consciousness of the ancestral tree king would be connected to the perception of the tree god and be able to control the tree god alone. The price was to temporarily deprive the ancestral tree king of the chance to revive. If he could survive, he could still return to the embrace of the mother tree after leaving the tree god state. However, if he died in this state, the ancestral tree king would be like those tree kings who had failed to advance to the transcendent grade and would never be able to revive. This was a drawback. However, this was the mission of the mother tree's will. The ancestral tree king did not have the right to choose. Han Zhao's tone was calm. With your control, the tree god has indeed become much more powerful. However, if you think that this small change can stop me, you're thinking too much. Furthermore, how long can you last in this state? Do you think you've won? The ancestral tree king's expression turned cold. Without another word, he activated Tree King Crown Liberation. In the void, the Tree King crown that represented the pugilist class shattered. The experience and techniques accumulated by every generation of martial tree kings were all integrated into the tree god. At the same time, the source energy of the crown seemed to have become a catalyst, instantly increasing the combat strength of the tree god. It was as if endless power suddenly surged out from the depths of his body and spread throughout his body in the blink of an eye. The intense pain invaded the ancestral tree king's spiritual body, causing him to let out a low roar. However, his spiritual strength did not weaken. Instead, it was stimulated and quickly strengthened. In the next moment, the tree god's body suddenly bulged with green muscles. The originally dry tree body suddenly became tall and sturdy. This feeling was as if the tree god was originally just a skeleton, and only now did flesh and blood appear on the skeleton. The tree god domain, which was originally at a disadvantage, instantly expanded and pushed Han Zhao's void domain away. Tree King Crown Liberation could strengthen the combat strength of the tree god, but it required the sacrifice of the corresponding Tree King crown. It would take thousands of years to recover from losing the qualifications of a tree king for a long time. The price was not small. In order to reduce the losses, the ancestral tree king sacrificed the pugilist crown without hesitation. The ancestral tree king's emotions were affected. It was as if a pile of dry would have been touched by a spark, and his fighting spirit rose. My strength is far from its limit. Black Star, only when you die can we be at peace. Chapter 1460. The surging pugilist flames burned, and the tree god's movements became even faster. Its strength increased greatly, and it suddenly grabbed the Emperor Sky Splitter Blade. It stopped the blade's momentum and stopped it in midair. At the same time, roots shot out from the surface of the tree god's body. The ends curled up as if they were tied into a knot. They were like thousands of fists, launching a flurry of attacks at the supreme heavenly venerate's mecha. The fist shadows that flickered with green light pierced through the combined shield of the mech legion and bombarded the supreme heavenly venerate's mecha. It shook nonstop and cracks appeared everywhere. Energy shot out from the back of the supreme heavenly venerate again and again, creating a green shockwave that did not weaken at all. It shattered the battleships behind it. My close combat ability has increased greatly. This should be the sacrifice of the subduing Tree King's crown, right? Han Xiao felt the impact on his mecha and analyzed calmly. He had seen Tree King crown liberation when he was extracting the Tree God's ability. The last time they fought, the Tree God had not used this skill, and he only saw it this time. Now that he saw the actual effect, Han Xiao felt a sense of familiarity. He felt that this move was a little like a character's summon card, used to obtain the power of the super system stored in different Tree King crowns. The world tree has a total of 5. Oh no, it's now 4 Tree King crowns. This means that the Tree God can unleash at least 4 more times. Its strength will continue to stack, and its final combat strength will probably be very shocking. Furthermore, this is not considering whether the Tree God has other explosive abilities. Han Xiaoxin quickly calculated. When the Tree God used its one-time explosive ability, the best way was to avoid it. However, the situation did not allow it. The multidimensional sky opening transportation device was one way. If he wanted to teleport the majority of the troops back, he would have to set up a new group of teleportation devices here. Now that the majority of the troops were already locked in battle with the World Tree, they naturally would not retreat halfway. Otherwise, many soldiers would have sacrificed themselves for nothing. Furthermore, Han Xiao also wanted to fight the Tree God head-on. After all, with his current level, it was already difficult to find an opponent. It was not easy to meet one, so how could he not dote on it? Looks like I have to show more of my true abilities. Let me see how many tricks you have. Han Zhao's eyes flashed with lightning. He had long known that the Tree God had an explosive ability, but the ancestral Tree King thought that he did not know and wanted to give him an unexpected attack. However, he had long been on guard. On the other side, the ancestral Tree King held onto the Emperor's Sky Splitter blade tightly, not allowing Han Zhao's weapon to escape his control. An endless amount of energy surged out from his body, and he actually had the upper hand against the supreme heavenly venerate, pushing Han Xiao back. Taking advantage of the fact that Han Xiao could not move, the ancestral Tree King controlled a large number of routes to attack the supreme heavenly venerate's chest and abdomen. The Mech Legion also reacted and began to continuously block the Tree God's attacks. At the same time, the mechanical particles flowing on the surface of the supreme heavenly venerate's body transformed into streaks of silk, intercepting the roots midway and attacking them continuously. Bang, bang, bang. From afar, countless blurry afterimages of light appeared beside the 2 transcendent grade supers. They interweaved and collided with each other. Metal and tree roots clashed at a high frequency, and endless shockwaves exploded in midair. Your strength is already below mine. The ancestral Tree King's expression was fierce. He twisted the Emperor's Sky Splitter blade and poured his strength into his arm. However, at this moment, an unstoppable and terrifying force suddenly came from the blade, instantly suppressing his strength. Boom! The next moment, the Emperor's Sky Splitter blade, which was originally frozen in midair, suddenly broke through the Tree God's posture and slashed down. In an instant, it slashed all the way from the Tree God's shoulder to his waist, leaving a huge wound. The Tree God was almost cut in half. What? The ancestral Tree King was shocked. Instead of retreating, he rushed forward and hugged Han Xiao. He wanted to use the strength of the crown to control Han Xiao and stop his subsequent attacks. However, the result was far from what he had imagined. The Tree God was pressed down by the supreme heavenly venerate and was almost dismembered. The power brought by sacrificing the pugilist crown was actually suppressed by Han Xiao. The ancestral Tree King was horrified. It was not easy for him to detonate his pugilist flames and escape. The tree god's body was already in tatters, and countless pieces of his newly born flesh had been cut off. He was recovering. Han Xiao casually cut off the world tree root that was blocking his pursuit. He looked at the tree god from afar and clicked his tongue in dissatisfaction. "You're so arrogant, but in the end, you're only at this level." You. Sensing Han Zhao's increasing energy rank, the ancestral tree king's expression darkened. He thought that after using the crown, he would be able to gain the upper hand, but reality gave him a big slap. He did not expect that he would still not be Han Zhao's match after activating his seed. The other party's combat strength was also increasing. The ancestral tree king gritted his teeth and made a decision. "Don't be happy too early. I haven't reached my limit yet." As soon as he said that, the secret tree king's crown shattered. New origin energy was released. It was as if fuel had been added to the core furnace of the tree god, and his energy rank broke through the limit again. Countless mysterious magic knowledge surged into his brain. At the same time, large amounts of complicated magic circuits appeared on the surface of the tree god's body, forming enchantment runes. In an instant, the power of the magic crown was also added to the tree god's body. The tree god domain expanded once again, almost flattening the ethereal domain. An even stronger burden descended, and the ancestral tree king's mental strength soared once again. However, at the same time, it brought him even more intense pain. His soul let out an uncontrollable wail, and his emotions intensified. He endured the excruciating pain, mobilized the new energy, and launched an even stronger attack toward Han Xiao. Rumble. The surging magic formed a dense cluster of forbidden spells, which almost drained all the free energy in the surrounding battlefield. They turned into a strong rainbow light and drowned Han Xiao's entire body in an instant. Amidst the brilliance, there was an extremely lethal aura. The tree god maintained the magic bombardment while charging into the light of the explosion, chasing after the body of the supreme heavenly venerate. His fists and roots that contained astonishing pugilist flames landed on Han Zhao's body continuously, producing loud explosions. The ancestral tree king stared with bloodshot eyes and attacked tirelessly. "Black Star, I will never let you destroy my civilization." The roar of his mind swept across the battlefield, instantly causing the expressions of countless people to change. However, at this moment, a dense aura of blood suddenly erupted in front of him. Buzz! Before the ancestral tree king could react, a cold light suddenly lit up. He felt a huge force coming from his chest, and the Emperor's Skysplitter blade flew over and stabbed into his chest. The next second, the ancestral tree king realized that his arm was firmly fixed. Not only that, but all the roots that were hit suddenly stopped and could not be pulled out. The light of the magic bombardment dissipated, revealing the appearance of the supreme heavenly venerate. Han Xiao was surrounded by blood aura as he grabbed the tree god's arm. Mechanical particles formed countless tentacles that extended out from his back and accurately wrapped around every world tree root. They froze in midair like bridges. The strength of the supreme heavenly venerate increased rapidly and soon surpassed the second stage of the tree god's crown liberation, making the ancestral tree king unable to break free. The ancestral tree king's eyes widened. However, before he could do anything, Han Xiao suddenly headbutted him, making him dizzy. Immediately after, the supreme heavenly venerate grabbed the tree god's arm and pressed him down. At the same time, he bent his knee and raised his leg, smashing the tree god's head with a violent knee strike, causing a green shockwave to explode. Then, Han Xiao reached out and stabbed his hand into the gap in the tree god's head, all the way to his chest. He grabbed a bunch of messy roots and pulled them out, pulling out a large number of broken roots. If it was a normal life form, its spine and internal organs would have been pulled out. Even the tree god, who had a special body structure, would not feel good. At this moment, Han Xiao pulled out the Emperor's Skysplitter blade that was stabbed into the tree god's chest. He then used virtual creation to create countless physical cannons around him and aimed them at the tree god. Rumble. A round of shots, which were equivalent to the mass of an unknown number of planets, directly blasted the tree god into a pulp, sending wood chips flying everywhere. The terrifying kinetic energy pushed the tree god out, creating a blank area on the battlefield. Han Shao followed closely behind and rushed all the way to the middle of the third layer of defense. It was only then that the ancestral tree king stopped retreating. He teleported and hurriedly avoided Han Zhao's pursuit. He jumped a distance away and quickly summoned more world tree roots to heal his injuries. Seeing this, Han Shao swung his blade and casually said, "That's it? Is there more?" In terms of the quantity and quality of his attribute enhancement abilities, very few people could defeat him. The tree god had activated his seed twice in a row, and his combat strength had increased by a lot, but it was still not enough in front of him. Although he had not been a transcendent for long, as long as he activated all the bonuses, his combat strength could jump to a very shocking level. Han Shao was not sure what level he was at among the transcendent grade supers when he used his full strength. Hearing this, the ancestral tree king became more and more agitated. Anger, shock, and unwillingness filled his mind. He had sacrificed 2 tree king crowns and paid such a huge price, but his combat strength was still inferior to Black Star's. The ancestral tree king was already in a difficult position. To him, a stalemate was meaningless. If he could not kill Black Star, the other party would be able to make a comeback countless times. There was only one way out now, and that was to kill Black Star at all costs. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind. The ancestral tree king looked at the mother tree's main body with determination in his eyes. Seeing that the ancestral tree king did not reply, Han Shao was about to continue attacking, but at this moment, the world tree fleet around him charged toward him like crazy. Protect the mother tree. Go. Buy time for the tree god to catch his breath. Fight for our home. Countless world tree warriors roared and fought. Seeing this, Han Shao casually waved his firepower. The nearby fleets were all wiped out, and new troops filled in. Many World Tree soldiers sacrificed their lives to form a line of defense, stopping him from chasing after the tree god. They only wanted to buy one more second for the severely injured tree god to recover. However, in front of the absolute difference in strength, the determination to face death was meaningless. No matter how many fleets there were, they would all be wiped out by the psionic waves. Countless world tree-blessed race swarmed over like moths to a flame, leaving behind the corpses of the paralyzed battleships. There was only dead silence in the ship, and the crew had all been killed by the psionic waves. Han Shao was not obstructed at all. He stepped on the corpses of countless world tree battleships and pointed at the severely injured tree god. The huge figure of the supreme heavenly venerate emitted an aura that made one despair. Seeing this tragic scene, many of the players who were in the midst of battle were moved. They should be evenly matched, but why do I feel like it's an adult bullying a child? Look at Black Star style. I'm a little confused. Which one is the villain? Come on, big brother who plays with tree roots. Amidst the cheers of the players, Han Shao crashed into the tree god, who had yet to fully recover, and pushed him forward. The tree god seemed to have lost the ability to resist and could not stop Han Zhao's footsteps at all. The two of them tangled together and broke through the third and fourth layers of defense. Not long after, they reached the innermost fifth layer of defense. The main body of the world tree that supported this dimension was still right in front of them. The gazes of the Galactic Alliance army and the World Tree fleet were all focused on them. Seeing Black Star approaching the World Tree's main body, everyone's hearts were in their mouths. However, at this moment, the tree god's green domain suddenly expanded. Buzz! Green light flashed and enveloped the two of them. Then, it shrank into light spots and disappeared. The two of them were swallowed and disappeared from the battlefield in front of everyone. All the detection devices lost track of them. This scene was out of the expectations of the Galactic Alliance army. Countless people's hearts shrank, and they were flustered and confused, not knowing what had happened. At the same time, in the Strategic Command Center of the Galactic Alliance Army. Simon pounced on the table agitatedly. His eyes widened as he stared at the signal point that had disappeared from the sand table. He could not hide his shock. Where's Black Star? Where's the big Black Star? Where did the two of them go? Chapter 1461. This was a deep and vast space, like a real universe. The black velvet curtain was dotted with green stars, dazzling. Suddenly, a green light appeared out of thin air, spinning and expanding, turning into a wormhole-like vortex that spat out Han Zhao's figure. Han Zhao quickly stabilized himself and turned to observe his surroundings curiously. "Where did you bring me?" He glanced at the interface, and the combat information showed his current status. He had been swallowed by the tree god, and this universe-like world was the inner space of the tree god. The next moment, Han Zhao immediately felt the repulsion of the entire world. The space around him was pressuring him, suppressing his strength. The void domain was squeezed to the point that it could only stick to the surface of the body, almost turning into a flat membrane. At the same time, Han Zhao also discovered that an unknown corrosive force was continuously reducing his health points. In his status bar, it was displayed as World Tree's digestive function. "So, I've fallen into the stomach of the World Tree," Han Zhao thought to himself. Buzz. At this moment, the green light in front of Han Zhao shrank and condensed into the body of the tree god. His injuries had already recovered, and he stood facing him from afar. The ancestral tree king said with a deep voice, "Black Star, our battle is not over yet." Han Zhao sized him up. "This is your inner space, right? You actually dare to suck me in. You're really not afraid of death." Releasing the inner space domain did not have any side effects because it was just a projection of power, just like the descent of a secondary dimension. However, sucking the enemy into the inner space was the opposite. This was a dangerous operation. If the inner space itself was destroyed, the transcendent would also be severely injured. It was equivalent to exposing his vitals to the opponent. However, in the inner space, the enemy's strength would be greatly suppressed, and he would receive a higher buff. Therefore, this was a double-edged sword. Even if Han Zhao was very tanky, he was not willing to suck any enemy into his body. This would only increase the risk. In his opinion, the Ancestral Tree King's move was undoubtedly a gamble, but it was not smart. If you don't die, the Mother Tree will never have a day of peace. This will be your death ground. The Ancestral Tree King's tone was ruthless, and he attacked again without hesitation. Walala! An endless stream of green light shot toward Han Zhao like a meteor shower. Seeing this, Han Zhao lifted the Emperor's robe, and a thick psionic shield blocked the dense rain of light. At the same time, he ordered the Mech Legion to open fire. However, they did not attack the tree god. Instead, they bombarded the tree god in all directions, causing the energy clusters to expand. Under normal circumstances, attacking the inner space was like turning the other party's body upside down, and the damage would be reflected back to the tree god. However, the next moment, something out of Han Zhao's expectations happened. The tree god was not affected at all. Furthermore, it gave up all its defenses and attacked fiercely, as if it was not worried about its inner space being damaged at all. Han Zhao was a little surprised. His void domain was suppressed, but the tree god was like a fish in water in the inner space. His strength decreased, and he had no choice but to take a defensive stance. Interesting. Your inner space won't be damaged? Han Zhao narrowed his eyes and observed the flow of energy while resisting the Ancestral Tree King's attacks. Not long after, Han Zhao's eyes lit up. He noticed something and smiled. "I see. I roughly guessed it. Your inner space is connected to the World Tree and transferred all the damage, right?" The Ancestral Tree King's heart tightened, but he did not answer. His attacks became even more intense. The things that the World Tree devoured formed a Mother Tree world in its body. There were also planets and lives, and most of them operated according to the state they were in when they were devoured. They would not increase or decrease naturally, and it was equivalent to a special exhibition hall. If the members of the World Tree were unwilling to appear in the outside world, they would live in the Mother Tree world. The so-called transformation of the World Tree's body was like spitting something out of its body to the outside world. The Tree God and the World Tree were closely connected, so the inner space was also connected to the Mother Tree world. Strictly speaking, the Tree God's inner space was a clone of the Mother Tree world. The Ancestral Tree King could distribute the damage to the Tree God's inner space to the Mother Tree world. This way, the World Tree's main body would suffer a certain amount of damage, but the Tree God would not be injured and would be able to maintain its peak state. Under normal circumstances, the Ancestral Tree King would not let the World Tree's main body take such a risk, but now, increasing the Tree God's combat strength was more important, so he could only make a temporary choice. Therefore, in order to prevent the World Tree's main body from suffering any further damage, the Ancestral Tree King chose to end the battle quickly. He had to get rid of this enemy before Han Xiao caused more damage to the inner space. Seeing that Han Xiao had noticed his weakness so quickly, the Ancestral Tree King's expression changed, and he gritted his teeth. "Even if I have to bet my future, I must kill you." As soon as he said that, the crown of the Fortitude Tree King shattered. The powerful crown origin energy surged in, and the power of the Tree God soared once again. Precise mechanical armor spread rapidly on the surface of the Tree God's body. At the same time, mechanical soldiers flickering with green light were generated on a large scale around the Tree God. This scene was like a transcendent grade mechanic activating virtual creation. However, the Ancestral Tree King did not stop. He endured the pain and directly took over the allocation of resources for the king's legacy from the will of the Mother Tree. The sacrificial tree crown was a way to strengthen the Tree God, but it was not the only way. Among the abilities that Han Xiao had not seen, there were other ways to strengthen it, and investing more Beyonder's Vestige was another way. If the Beyonder's Vestige was the firewood that burned the power of the Tree God, adding more firewood would naturally make the flames burn even brighter. After so many years, generations of Tree Kings had failed to break through to the transcendent grade, and they had left behind some King's relics. They were strategic resources, and every time they were used, there would be one less. Originally, he only needed to consume one portion each time he summoned the Tree God, but the Ancestral Tree King could not care less and directly burn half of his inventory. Bang! An intense energy tide spread out, and the energy level of the Tree God rose bit by bit. Rich and bright green waves surged as if they were going to fill the entire space. "Good fellow, see it again." Han Xiao secretly bared his teeth. "This is too much. Are you a scion?" "Oh no, a scion tree." After sacrificing 3 crowns and burning half of the Beyonder's Vestige, the combat strength of the Tree God soared to a higher level, and its combat style also changed. Other than using the basic skills of the World Tree, various magic, martial arts, and mechanical system methods formed an exquisite combination. One person was like an expert of 3 systems. It was very flashy, but its power was astonishing. In an instant, the violent attacks pierced through the shield, leaving all kinds of wounds on the body of the Supreme Heavenly Venerate, and the devices were destroyed one after another. I still can't underestimate this guy. With the foundation of the World Tree civilization, there's a lot of room for his combat strength to fluctuate. Han Xiao felt a lot of pressure from the Ancestral Tree King's attacks, and his heart skipped a beat. If he had not sealed the Heart Tree Crown, the complete Tree God might have been able to completely suppress him after receiving so many enhancements. However, the current Tree God was in an incomplete state, and its foundation was weakened. Thus, the effective seed was also reduced and could not reach its peak. What a pity. If this is your full strength, I won't be the one to die today. Han Zhao's tone froze. Boom. Without waiting for the Ancestral Tree King to react, the energy level of the Supreme Heavenly Venerate suddenly increased explosively. In the blink of an eye, it caught up to the combat strength of the Tree God. All kinds of strange abilities erupted one after another. stopping the Ancestral Tree King's attacks. Han Shao immediately took back the initiative and counterattacked fiercely, turning the situation around in an instant. The Ancestral Tree King's eyes widened. "You, Tisk, do you think seed is your patent?" Han Shao narrowed his eyes. An endless stream of new energy fused into his body, bringing him an incomparable sense of strength. He almost felt like he could pierce through the universe. The reason for this change was because he had used the character summon cards in his inventory. Ever since he had stepped into the peak beyond Grade A realm, Han Shao had not used the character summon cards much. Because there was no need for it, he had a lot of stock in his hands. Before this expedition, he had specially used all the blank character summon cards to copy the abilities of different beyond grade as in a large amount of resources. It was not easy for him to accumulate a large amount of wealth, and Han Shao activated character summon cards one after another without any heartache. He used almost everything he had. He only felt carefree and happy. After scheming for so long, he finally had a chance to be extravagant. Compared to the explosion of a small universe, I'm the expert. Sensing that Black Star's combat strength had caught up again, the Ancestral Tree King's mind exploded. Every time he managed to pull open a gap, he would be caught up in the end. Black Star's unfathomable trump card made the Ancestral Tree King, who was already emotionally unstable, completely go crazy. Black Star, bang! The last Tree King crown exploded, and the Ancestral Tree King decisively sacrificed his crown. He threw all his worries to the back of his mind and threw all the Beyonder's vestige into the Tree God's body. He pushed the power of the Tree God forward at all costs. His strength increased at an astonishing speed, but at the same time, faint green cracks spread on the surface of the Tree God's body. The huge load was already at the limit of the Tree God. The Tree God itself had a limit. It was like a container. When the accumulated power exceeded the maximum capacity, it would burst from the inside. Perhaps in its perfect state, the capacity of the Tree God could withstand the current power, but the incomplete Tree God was like a smaller container. It could not withstand such a load, and its injuries began to accumulate rapidly. However, the Ancestral Tree King ignored the overload situation and launched an indomitable attack at Han Shao with his explosive strength. At this moment, he only had one thought left, and that was to kill Black Star. Come! Han Shao was full of fighting spirit as he charged forward. Bang, 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 bang. The two of them overflowed with terrifying power. They only attacked and did not defend, bombarding each other countless times. The energy collided, forming an extremely dense, explosive area. Here, space-time was distorted, almost condensing into a singularity. The two of them abandoned all distracting thoughts. All that was left in their eyes was their opponent. They attacked tirelessly, and the battlefield traveled throughout the universe. Space trembled and shattered. The starlight dimmed and fell. The battle lasted for an unknown period of time, as if it was an eternity. Only then did this battle come to an end. Burning the Beyonder's vestige was the only way to maintain the existence of the Tree God. The Tree God was finally exhausted, and the power obtained from the seed explosion rapidly weakened. The Tree God's body was already covered in cracks from the overload, like a porcelain piece that had been pieced together after being broken. Crack! The Tree God's chest suddenly split open, causing a chain reaction. With its chest as the center, its entire body collapsed, turning into light fragments that filled the sky. This scene represented the death of the Tree God. The Tree God was also alive. Once it was killed, the fused Tree King would also be severely injured, and the Tree God's descent would be on cooldown for a long time. In addition, because the 4 Tree King crowns had been sacrificed, the World Tree could no longer summon the Tree God. In the sky filled with light fragments, the Ancestral Tree King's body floated. He seemed to have exhausted all his lifespan, becoming old and wrinkled. As the Tree God collapsed, the Ancestral Tree King also slowly turned into ashes. His life was like a candle in the wind. I lost. I'm sorry, Mother Tree. I let you down. I was so close. I'm not willing. The ancestral tree king's consciousness gradually dissipated as he muttered to himself. Han Xiao still did not relax. He received the ancestral tree king's intermittent brainwaves and clicked his tongue. What do you mean by almost? From the beginning to the end, you had no chance of winning. The ancestral tree king turned around and glared at Han Xiao. I did not save my civilization, but sooner or later, you will taste the despair that I am feeling right now. I curse you. Don't look like you have a deep grudge. When you destroy other civilizations, you should be mentally prepared to be destroyed by others. Han Xiao did not have the mood to talk nonsense with him. He reached out and grabbed the ancestral tree king. Pooh! The ancestral tree king was crushed into dust and disappeared. His consciousness completely fell into darkness. Han Xiao was not interested in waiting for him to die slowly. He was not a villain who did not know how to deal the final blow. Because of the World Tree's operation, the ancestral tree king had lost his ability to revive. If he died in this state, he would really die and disappear. I've finally dealt with him. Good fellow, it almost drained me dry. Only at this moment did Han Xiao finally relax. He was extremely tired. Although he had won this battle, Han Xiao was also very tired. In the final stage, the tree god seemed to have activated the freedom mastery technique. It was so ferocious that it almost shattered his supreme, heavenly venerate mecha several times. Strictly speaking, the one who killed the tree god was not Han Xiao, but the ancestral tree king himself. The damage caused by the overload and the burning of the Beyonder's vestige was the main reason why the tree god was exhausted. If the tree god was in a perfect state with all 5 crowns gathered, Han Xiao felt that he would not be a match for him. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. Crack! Crack! The moment the tree god completely died, the inner space began to collapse rapidly and crack open like a broken mirror. Dazzling light flowed through every crack, all leading to the outside world. Han Xiao calmed himself down and kept the severely damaged Mech Legion back into the Divine Fortress. He then drove the huge, supreme, heavenly venerate into one of the cracks and disappeared into the light. End of chapter. Chapter 1462. In the World Tree's main body dimension, the war had already reached its climax. Black Star and the Tree God had already disappeared for a long time. Due to the sudden change, the Galactic Alliance Army did not know the situation. Countless officers and soldiers could only endure their uneasiness and fear and continue to participate in the war. Due to the lack of Black Star, the advance of the main force was also slow. At this moment, the Galactic Alliance fleet had barely broken through to the second layer of defense, and the World Tree Blessed race did not care about the cost to reinforce the defense line. The battlefield was like a millstone, crushing the battleships and soldiers into powder. The casualties were uncountable, and both sides suffered heavy losses. Without Black Star support, the advance of the Beyond Grade, as was also blocked. However, the quality and scale of their combat strength still exceeded the current high-level combatants of the World Tree. The two sides fought for a long time, and the Beyond Grade, as of the Galactic Society, had already killed most of the high-level combatants of the other side. However, because the Beyond Grade as lacked the strength of Black Star, who could ignore the large-scale galactic battlefield, even if they killed many experts of the World Tree, they could not go deep. Instead, due to the fierce artillery fire of the World Tree Blessed race, they did not dare to charge too far forward and be used as a target. They could only retreat to the vicinity of the main force to cooperate. Although there was not much danger with Aurora's help, the Beyond Grade, as were temporarily unable to reverse the current stalemate. After all, the World Tree had too many troops. I wonder where Black Star is taken to. Can you contact him? Kasui pressed his hand on his forehead and controlled his psychic energy to shatter the enemy's one ship after another. He asked in the Beyond Grade A combat channel with a worried tone. I can't contact him. It's most likely that the Tree God used some trump card to prevent Black Star from continuing to advance and brought him to some alternate space. He probably can only come out after a victor is decided. Hela replied casually. She swept the cold current of death across the fleet, and red ice crystals grew out of the interior of these battleships, bursting through the hull. Black Star won't lose, right? Olu asked hesitantly. There's nothing to be afraid of. Whether Black Star wins or not, he can come and go as he pleases. Ella was not worried about Han Zhao's safety at all. It's hard to say. The world tree civilization has developed to this point and is unfathomable. Who knows what other trump cards it has? Maybe Black Star will fall for it too. Ella, Aurora, and the others weren't worried. However, there were also many beyond grade as who were worried. It wasn't that they didn't believe in Black Star's strength, but a war of this scale. No one could say for sure what would happen. As the saying goes, concern leads to confusion. Black Star shouldered the responsibility of leading the association and was also the controller of the Sanctum Revival. It was hard for some of the beyond grade as not to feel nervous, especially since they knew nothing about Black Star's situation. At the same time, Yao was in the Strategic Command Center. Werno's remote projection was also present, watching the battle. Most of the beyond grade, as in the Galactic Society, were involved in this war, but Werno's was not one of them. When Ethereal came looking for him, he still refused to participate in this battle. The reason was the same as before. He needed to maintain a perfect state at all times. He did not want to waste his energy in other aspects, lest he missed the opportunity to step into the Transcendent grade. Because Black Star, a real Transcendent, was participating in the battle, the Arcane Church did not force Wernos to take action. However, Wernos requested to watch the battle, which was not rejected. The officers and staff officers were discussing the battle endlessly. Wernos did not interrupt from the beginning to the end and stood alone on the sidelines. He silently watched the battlefield. He was not very interested in the battle. Requesting to watch the battle, the main reason was that he wanted to see the battle of a Transcendent grade and use this to inspire himself. However, this idea fell through. Black Star and the Tree God should be fighting in an alternate space. Unfortunately, I can't see it. Werno sighed. He only watched a small portion of the battle between the two of them on the main battlefield. They did not even use any of their trump cards. He could not help but feel that it was a pity that he could not see the rest of the battle. He only felt that he had not had enough, and his heart itched. If he could watch the entire battle between the two Transcendent grade supers, his chances of stepping into the Transcendent grade might be higher. Just as he was feeling regretful, a strange feeling suddenly surfaced in his heart. He could not explain it clearly. It was an inexplicable intuition, as if he had missed something. Strange, this feeling came and went quickly. Wernos pressed his chest, a little confused. Before he could think carefully, the officer beside him suddenly exclaimed. Wernos turned around and saw Black Star, who had disappeared for a long time, appear on the battlefield again, immediately causing the situation to change. In the fifth layer of the World Tree's defense circle, right where the two of them had disappeared, a shattered green light suddenly bloomed, and a huge figure flew out. It was Han Zhao's supreme heavenly venerate. Black Star is back. The Galactic Alliance army was overjoyed. They hurriedly widened their eyes and waited for the tree god to appear. However, the next moment, the green light exploded and turned into light fragments, but the tree god did not come out. It was as if he had really disappeared. Where's the tree god? Where'd he go? Many people were energized, and they had a guess that made them slightly excited. Before they could ask, Han Xiao connected to the combat channel again and confirmed their guess. I've already eliminated the tree god. He won't obstruct our actions anymore. Continue attacking. Han Xiao let out a sigh of relief. Seeing that the battlefield was still in a stalemate, he was relieved. He was afraid that he would be entangled by the tree god for too long, causing the battlefield to change. Nothing unexpected had happened. He did not delay and continued to charge toward the World Tree's main body without hesitation. Enduring the enemy's focused fire, he forced his way into the defense circle alone. Seeing that Han Xiao did not mention anything about the battle, although they were curious, they did not ask further. To them, it was enough to know the outcome. Follow Black Star. Victory belongs to us. The Galactic Alliance Army's morale was greatly boosted. They swept away their uneasiness and followed closely behind, launching even more ferocious attacks. However, to Han Zhao's surprise, he thought that after the tree god died in battle, the morale of the world tree-blessed race would be low and they would be defeated. However, the result was the opposite. Not only did the world tree army not retreat, but their counterattack became even more intense. They abandoned all their worries and fought with their backs to the wall. The casualties were extremely tragic, but the world tree-blessed race did not retreat. The fleets on the periphery abandoned their front lines one after another and teleported to the fifth layer of defense. They launched a suicidal charge at Han Zhao like moths to a flame, using their lives to build a barrier and slowing down his advance at all costs. In fact, all the members of the World Tree had seen the entire process of the Tree God resisting Black Star through the mental network. Every time the Tree God erupted, everyone knew the price the ancestral Tree King had paid. Seeing the Tree King, who was like a totem of faith, risk his life at all costs, countless members of the World Tree could empathize with him. They nervously cheered him on, hoping that the Tree God would defeat Black Star with his explosive power. However, their high hopes turned into disbelief time and time again. Seeing that the ancestral Tree King had paid such a huge price, only to be completely killed by Han Zhao, a huge sense of tragedy crashed into the hearts of all the members of the World Tree, leaving them with only despair. All the members of the World Tree understood that there were no experts who could stop Black Star, but this instead stimulated their final determination. As the saying went, a desperate army would definitely win. Not only did the morale of the World Tree blessed race not decline, it even increased exponentially. No one gave up. Everyone was willing to die and drag the enemy down with them. If they could not rely on the Tree God, they would rely on themselves. All the fear and confusion faded away, leaving only the determination to die. This was the final counterattack of a civilization at the end of its road. Boom! Boom! The densely packed battleships blocked the path ahead. Han Zhao attacked time and time again, and sabers and cannons flashed nonstop. Every time, they could shatter a large number of battleships. However, there were people filling in the gaps at all times, so it was difficult to clear a path. Continuous high-density explosions surrounded him. Han Zhao felt as if he had fallen into a swamp, and it was difficult for him to move. The pressure from the front was even greater than the pressure from the Tree God. What a tenacious civilization! Han Zhao was slightly moved. Although they were opponents, he had to admit that the tenacity and resilience displayed by the World Tree civilization exceeded his previous judgment. In his previous life, even the galactic society that was united against the outside world was slightly weaker than the World Tree. In the final battle, the World Tree fleet in his previous life did not show such determination. Although the World Tree is a deformed civilization, I'm afraid they won't be able to find any match in the entire universe in terms of unity and cohesion. Han Zhao shook his head. He admired the World Tree's desperate fight, but unfortunately, without the Tree God, the World Tree could no longer stop him. All of this was futile. Han Zhao looked back at the large army that was quickly following behind him. His gaze swept across the Beyond Grade as at the front. The Beyond Grade, as of the association, all understood the hint in his gaze. They quietly spread out and formed a loose formation in front of the various armies. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see that they were like a net that wrapped around the fleet at the front. The victory was already decided. What he had to consider now was how to pick the peaches. Oh no, it should be preventing others from picking the peaches. Seeing this, Han Zhao turned around. His eyes flashed, and he activated a character summon card. Golden Ring, Ulu's character summon card, Golden Treasure Ship Ram. Dense streams of light suddenly appeared on the body of the Supreme Heavenly Venerate. He adjusted his direction and suddenly took a step forward, aiming at the World Tree's main body and charging forward in his super armor state. The World Tree fleet that was blocking in front could not withstand it all. They shattered on the surface of the supreme heavenly venerate's shield, and the wreckage flew everywhere. The supreme heavenly venerate was like a huge golden meteor, directly piercing through the last defense circle and crashing into the world tree's main body. Bang! Countless roots seemed to have been struck by lightning. They suddenly curled up, and even the entire dimension shook. "Let me see what you are." Han Xiao hooked his finger and stabbed it into the tree trunk, injecting energy into it. At this moment, the world tree's main body, which had been sitting there waiting for death, finally revealed its secret card. Buzz! In an instant, the consciousness of all the members of the world tree turned into a terrifying mental attack with unprecedented lethality. It followed the energy link between the two sides and charged toward Han Zhao's brain. This mental attack was so strong that even if all the Beyond Grade, as in the Galactic Society, worked together to resist, their minds would be shattered in the blink of an eye. The World Tree's main body was not without the ability to move. When the two sides built a physical or energy connection, she could launch a mental attack on the target. This was because only by invading her with energy could one form a soul connection with her and take the initiative, turning her into a universal treasure that could be controlled. This move was her trump card to protect herself from being enslaved by outsiders. However, at this moment, Han Xiao, who was already on guard, opened another character summon card without hesitation. Underworld Onisilu character summon card, 10,000 soul stream. Immune to all mental attacks. In his brain, a destructive mental current bombarded Han Xiao's mental body, but it was like a breeze that did not cause any damage. Instead, it turned into pure energy and was absorbed by Han Xiao. "I've been prepared for this. Come and meet your natural enemy." Han Xiao's eyes lit up. The next moment, a translucent snake shot out from between his brows, and its body expanded at an unbelievable speed. The pivotal snake had already become a virtual life form. Its body could expand and contract at will in the material world. In the blink of an eye, its body became the size of the world tree. It coiled around the world tree's main body, opened its mouth, and bit down without hesitation. With this bite, the pivotal snake finally established an information bridge with the world tree's main body. Countless information began to be exchanged rapidly. Buzz! Buzz! The entire world tree's main body trembled violently like a person struggling in pain. Even space trembled violently. In order to subdue the world tree, Han Xiao naturally came prepared. Establishing a soul connection was only one aspect. The biggest problem was actually to destroy the world tree's resistance, and his trump card was the pivotal snake. After the pivotal snake transformed into a virtual life form and rapidly grew up, it automatically awakened a new ability. Only then did it truly show why it was the world tree's natural enemy. The world tree's independent consciousness was its food. It was only then that Han Xiao understood the meaning of the pivotal snake's existence. It could turn the world tree from a special life form into an unconscious universal treasure. It was precisely because of this trump card that Han Xiao finally made up his mind to carry out the plan to subdue the world tree. He would not do anything that he was not confident in. Chapter 1463. Crack, crack. The gigantic pivotal snake coiled around the world tree and bit at it. Although it was only a virtual life form and could not harm physical objects, the pivotal snake's way of damaging the world tree was through the information form channel, which only targeted the will of the mother tree. The roots danced wildly, and the world tree struggled crazily, wanting to get rid of the pivotal snake. However, the roots could not touch the virtual body of the pivotal snake at all. Although the world tree was strong, the reason why the pivotal snake was its natural enemy was because of its unsolvable restraints. The will of the mother tree did not have the time to care about Han Xiao, and the mental attack was directly muted. The pivotal snake struggled endlessly like a girl who was anxiously tugging at her clothes. An endless stream of machines surged out from the godly fortress and merged with the supreme heavenly venerate, causing Han Zhao's body to expand rapidly. His arms could gradually wrap around the trunk of the world tree as if he was going to uproot it. While the will of the mother tree was in chaos, Han Xiao used his own energy to invade the world tree's main body and tried to form a soul connection with it. He wanted to dye the other party with his own color and shape. To the blessed race of the world tree, this feeling was like their faith being insulted. Countless people launched a new round of suicidal attacks at Han Xiao with red eyes, blowing up batches after batches of them. Because of Han Zhao's actions, the World Tree Fleet was inevitably in chaos. The Galactic Alliance army naturally would not let go of this good opportunity. The fleet quickly pierced through the defense circle and soon reached the 4th level, suffering an even more intense counterattack. The leading troops were not far from Han Xiao, and they all provided firepower support to help him intercept the World Tree's troops. Energy beams flew everywhere, detonating a series of battleships on the battlefield. On the other side, seeing that Black Star had successfully broken through to the side of the World Tree, the officers in the Strategic Command Center perked up. Good. Black Star has already stepped on the vital point of the World Tree civilization. We'll have to rely on him to destroy the World Tree's main body. We have to protect him and let him focus on dealing with the World Tree. Even if it's a conservative estimate, our chances of winning are more than 95%. The World Tree has no chance to turn the tables. Many officers were excited. The goal of the 3 universal civilizations starting this war was to eliminate the enemy in one fell swoop. They hoped to accomplish this in one fell swoop, so they gathered most of the forces in the explored universe. Although it did not mean that they would die trying if they did not succeed, if they lost this battle, the 3 universal civilizations would also suffer great loss. Therefore, before they set off, many officers had made a military order that they could only win, not lose. However, the officers did not want to lie to themselves. Their confidence was actually not very firm. Their true confidence came from Black Star and the Pivotal Snake. If they did not have such trump cards, they would not dare to say that they would definitely be able to determine the outcome of the battle. At this moment, seeing Black Star kill the tree god, break through the encirclement, uproot the mother tree, and almost single-handedly push the direction of the battle, everyone heaved a sigh of relief while feeling excited. They felt that they had not trusted the wrong person. Indeed, the battle still depended on Black Star. However, the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations were not happy at all. Instead, their faces were solemn, as if they had some concerns. The ethereal Pope hesitated for a moment before speaking. Why do I feel like Black Star isn't destroying the World Tree's main body? Hearing this, the officers were stunned. They suppressed the joy in their hearts and carefully observed Han Zhao's actions toward the World Tree. The more they looked, the stranger they felt. It does seem to be the case. He didn't continue to attack. It's more like he's subduing the World Tree's main body. Is he trying to control the World Tree? Everyone was shocked, and they immediately understood that the situation had become complicated. The officers turned to look, and as expected, the expressions of the 3 leaders turned extremely ugly. What a Black Star! I knew he had other plans. With such a huge appetite, isn't he afraid of dying from overeating? Lewis was shocked and furious. Our worries were right. He used us to defeat the World Tree army and create an opportunity for him to subdue the World Tree's main body. We cannot sit back and watch him achieve his goal. The ethereal Pope's tone was furious and resolute. The World Tree was too powerful. No matter whose hands it fell into, it would be a threat to the 3 universal civilizations. The 3 universal civilizations only wanted to destroy it directly and did not even dare to take the risk of capturing it. Black Star was already in existence beyond the norm, and the 3 universal civilizations had long been unable to control him. If Black Star obtained the World Tree, it would be a threat of a qualitative change. It would be equivalent to him obtaining the power of a universal civilization, which would be enough to fight against the entire explored universe. To a certain extent, it would even surpass it, enough to shake the foundation of their rule. although the internal conflicts were temporarily suppressed by the invasion of the external enemies. The three universal civilizations did not forget the fear of losing control of their individual strength. They still had irreconcilable conflicts with Black Star. Once the war ended, these problems would surface again. The three of them could not sit back and watch the Beyond Grade as control the World Tree. Furthermore, the war had lasted for more than 10 years, and the three universal civilizations were the first victims. They had wasted so much time in the war and lost countless resources. Now that they were finally about to reap the fruits of victory, the three universal civilizations were naturally unwilling to let Han, Shao, take advantage of them. We were the ones who mobilized the army to resist the World Tree and suffered the heaviest losses. But in the end, we created an opportunity for others. Who could tolerate this? Even if Black Star had worked hard and contributed a lot, it would not do. In the eyes of the three of them, Black Star's actions were like a knife in the rough. Fighting the enemy together was just an excuse. The reason Black Star stayed behind to help them resist the external enemies was to use the forces of the Galactic Society to obtain the World Tree for him. That must be it. The three of them actually had some guesses about Han Zhao's selfishness, but it was useless even if they guessed. They still had to rely on Black Star for the war, and it was almost destined to come to this point. We can't let Black Star succeed. Then what should we do? Should we fire at Black Star? Are you crazy? We haven't really won yet, and you still dare to fight among yourselves in front of the enemy? What are you thinking? The officers were agitated and started arguing. Simon made a prompt decision and shouted, "Inform the direct troops of the three universal civilizations to stop providing cover fire to Black Star and attack the World Tree's main body. We must destroy it before Black Star succeeds." They had to stop Han Shao, but they could not turn against him. They could only change their tactics at the last minute and race against Black Star to destroy the target. However, everyone knew that the World Tree fleet would definitely protect the Mother Tree with their lives and stop their firepower. In addition, it was impossible for Black Star to not be prepared. He would definitely take some measures to stop them. We can only rely on ourselves. This thought flashed through the minds of the officers, and their attitudes were not optimistic. The order was quickly passed down, and the direct troops of the three universal civilizations did not think too much about it. They followed the order and poured firepower at the World Tree's main body. However, most of the attacks were stopped halfway by the World Tree fleet. Just as the three universal civilizations fleets were doing this, the Black Star Corps and the other Beyond Grade A organizations' joint forces also reacted. They immediately started to slack off and slack off. At the same time, they started to move, deliberately blocking the direction of the three universal civilizations fleets. The many Beyond Grade A Association members also took action. Some of them deliberately guided the World Tree fleet to attack the three universal civilizations' direct troops through various positions, while the others activated the regardless of friend or foe AoE strategy, attacking both the enemy and the three universal civilizations fleets, indirectly disrupting the three universal civilizations formation. Because many of their own people were causing trouble, the cooperation of the Galactic Alliance army was messed up. Their attacks suddenly slowed down, and their advance stopped. They were dragged into a chaotic battle by the Berserk World Tree fleet and could not leave for the time being. Damn it, the Ethereal Pope was furious. He wanted to punch the table, but the remote projection could not touch the real thing. His fist passed through the table. I knew Black Star was prepared. Marber's expression was also unfriendly. Both sides knew their respective goals and were obstructing each other. However, on the surface, they still had to pretend to fight together, as if all their actions were focused on attacking the World Tree. This situation could be said to be different dreams. The three leaders did not want to affect the battle by burning the bridge after crossing the river, but they felt that they had no choice. Due to the scheming on both sides, the Galactic Alliance army was divided into three sides. One was the direct troops of the three universal civilizations who wanted to destroy the World Tree's main body, and the other was the Beyond Grade A forces who were providing cover for Black Star. The rest of the allies who were fighting seriously were shocked by the chaos on both sides. They were stunned and did not know what was going on. Why did they suddenly cause trouble for each other? There was chaos in the Galactic Alliance army, but the conflict between the three universal civilizations and the beyond Grade A organizations did not interfere much with Han Zhao's subduing of the World Tree. Han Zhao's energy continued to seep into the depths of the World Tree's main body. The will of the Mother Tree had already been defeated by the pivotal snake and could not stop his invasion at all. In the intertwining of their minds, illusions flashed before Han Zhao's eyes, and he saw the history of the World Tree's development. When it was weak, it was worshipped by a certain race and offered all kinds of sacrifices. The will of the Mother Tree slowly sprouted during this process, providing all kinds of convenience for the development of the race under it while guiding them to expand outwards. After completing the primitive accumulation, the World Tree embarked on the bloody path of rise and became a universe hunter. One race after another became its vassals, and one civilization after another became food. Gradually, it spread its branches and leaves, and its abilities became more and more abundant. Countless memories appeared before Han Zhao's eyes. In a daze, he seemed to see a small sapling sprout and grow rapidly. In the end, it covered the stars and the sun, standing at the top of the starry sky. Countless wormholes appear between the treetops, each leading to a different world. Endless cosmic radiation storms swept past, but they were like a breeze, only causing the lush leaves to sway gently. Trillions of clans and believers were spread all over the roots, worshipping devoutly. This scene exuded a majesty and mystery that made one revere. Buzz! Suddenly, Han Zhao's eyes cleared, and he retreated from the illusion. A new existence had appeared in his senses. It was the World Tree that had successfully formed a soul connection. At this moment, the will of the Mother Tree finally reached its limit and was completely swallowed by the pivotal snake. The next moment, the World Tree's main body stopped struggling and lost any ability to move independently. It instantly became a dead object. Han Zhao's body trembled, and a stream of information flowed into his mind. It contained the various abilities of the World Tree, as well as the authority to control it. Although the Tree King's authority was high, he was still a subordinate of the World Tree. Han Zhao's authority was above the Mother Tree and could not be controlled. The surging new energy flowed into Han Zhao's body through the soul connection, providing a new boost and pushing his energy level up again. This, Han Zhao could not help but take a deep breath. His entire body was filled with power. He was about to retract the pivotal snake when he realized that it did not stop. Instead, it plunged into the World Tree's main body and merged with it. Han Xiaoxin looked at the interface and saw a new suffix appear on the World Tree's name, Frowny Face World Tree, complete form. Could it be that the pivotal snake is not only its natural enemy, but it can also merge with the World Tree and make up for it? Han Xiao was secretly surprised. This ability was not reflected on the pivotal snake's attribute interface, and he had only seen it now. Just as the pivotal snake merged with the World Tree, Han Xiao noticed a change. He had just formed a soul connection with the World Tree, and it was only the first level. It was still very weak, but at this moment, the soul connection was suddenly strengthened and became many times more tenacious. If his previous progress on the World Tree was 10%, then it had increased to more than 80%. Could it be that the pivotal snake can help the controller better control the World Tree? Han Xiaoxin's heart skipped a beat. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Han Xiao felt the authority of the World Tree and could not be more satisfied. The independent will of the World Tree had been eliminated, and it had become a tool without thoughts. It was completely under his control and could be used without worry. Due to the characteristics of devouring and transformation, the World Tree could be seen as a universal treasure that could grow. However, he did not need to start from scratch because the current World Tree was already in a mature state. Controlling it was equivalent to obtaining the loyalty of the entire World Tree civilization. The power of this thing was many times more terrifying than the inheritance of the underworld that Hela and her sister had inherited. No wonder the three universal civilizations wanted to destroy my goal. Han Xiao turned to look at the battlefield, and his eyes flashed. He suddenly activated the authority of the World Tree and recalled all the World Tree fleets. The World Tree fleet, that was still fighting fearlessly a second ago, suddenly stopped fighting. Without a word, they turned around and flew into the roots, turning back into information form and entering the Mother Tree world. All of a sudden, the battlefield became much emptier, leaving only the troops of the Galactic Alliance army. Originally, the members of the World Tree were all prepared to fight to the death, but the moment the will of the Mother Tree disappeared and Han Xiao replaced the control, everyone's hostility disappeared without a trace. Just as they were feeling lost, a new mission arrived. They would not disobey the orders of the World Tree and directly cease fire and retreat. No matter how tragic their counterattack is, they're just a group of puppets being controlled. With a new master, they'll be obedient. Seeing this, Han Xiao sighed. However, sympathy was one thing, but he would not foolishly let the World Tree civilization go free. This was the foundation of the World Tree. Seeing that the enemy had retreated and disappeared, the Galactic Alliance army was stunned. They then looked at Han Xiao beside the tree and were overjoyed. Did we win? Boo-hoo, we're still alive. Ha! I knew I could trust Black Star. Countless soldiers were overjoyed, and the atmosphere of excitement and surprise quickly spread throughout the army. Every combat channel was filled with crazy cheers. Even many players who had not used up all their resurrection times were infected and cheered. However, when most of the fleets stopped firing, the direct troops of the three universal civilizations did not stop and continued to rain firepower on the World Tree. Without the obstruction of the World Tree fleet, the direct troops of the three universal civilizations were unimpeded. This scene immediately stopped everyone's cheers, attracting the shocked gazes of countless comrades. Oh, you still don't want to give up? You want to pretend that you don't know before I inform you, and try to destroy the World Tree one last time? Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. He knew what the three universal civilizations were thinking. He waved his hand, and a thick psionic barrier surrounded the World Tree, blocking the bombardment of the fleet. At the same time, Han Xiao shouted in the channel, "We can stop firing now. We can cease fire now. I have the World Tree under control." After waiting for a few seconds, the ethereal Pope's serious voice suddenly sounded in the channel. "In that case, destroy it. It's still a threat in the world. There's no need. I've already subdued the World Tree. Not enough. Only by destroying it can we completely eliminate the hidden dangers. Even if it's you, we won't be at ease." Burning the bridge so quickly? Han Xiao smiled faintly. "You're mistaken. We're just thinking about maintaining galactic peace. No one in the galactic society wants to face such a disaster again," the ethereal Pope said with a deep voice. Han Xiao shook his head. "Stop. Don't make the situation too ugly. We just won. Do you want the other allies to see the internal strife between us now?" Before the ethereal Pope could reply, Bruce interrupted coldly. "Black Star, this is the only thing we can't compromise on. You're the one who should stop. You've already contributed enough. Don't be stubborn. Let go. You're still the hero of the universe who ended the war. Looks like you won't cry until you see the coffin." Han Xiao shook his head. As soon as he said that, the expressions of the three leaders and the officers turned solemn. They knew that Black Star would not give up easily and were already prepared for a conflict. However, their goal was only to eliminate the World Tree's main body. Although they were suspected of burning the bridge after crossing it, the starting point was to eliminate the hidden dangers and be accepted by others. In their opinion, if Black Star started killing them, it would definitely arouse public anger. The reputation accumulated in the war would immediately collapse, and the other civilization allies present would stand on their side to resist Black Star. Therefore, although they were nervous, the three of them were not afraid that Black Star would fight back. They even looked forward to such a development. However, the next moment, Bruce and the other two widened their eyes. Han Xiao did not make a move. Instead, he raised his hand and patted the World Tree. The huge World Tree's main body rapidly shrank, turning into a green stream of light and flying into Han Zhao's palm, disappearing in front of everyone. This, Bruce and the other two were stunned. The previous war with the World Tree Fleet had given them the impression that the Mother Tree's main body could not move, so they felt that they had the upper hand. Therefore, the three of them were willing to take the risk of angering Black Star to gather a large army to destroy the World Tree on the spot. However, the three of them did not expect Black Star to be able to put away the World Tree and do something that the blessed race of the World Tree could not do previously. They could not react in time. What was there to destroy? Their plan fell through. In fact, Han Xiao could not do this in the beginning because the pivotal snake had increased his soul connection by a few stages. Only then did he unlock more authorities, including storing the World Tree into the inner space of a transcendent. Strictly speaking, the inner space was also a type of secondary dimension. It could also allow the World Tree to take root in it. This way, the inner space would be greatly strengthened and become extremely tough. In addition, he would not have to worry about the enemy targeting the weakness of the World Tree's main body. It was equivalent to carrying the Mother Tree with him. It was very convenient. Han Xiao had originally planned to use other methods to force the three universal civilizations to stop, but a head-on conflict was inevitable, and it would more or less damage his reputation. However, with this new operation, he changed his plan at the last minute and directly made the three universal civilizations lose their target. This would save him a lot of effort. Just as the three leaders were at a loss, Han Zhao's remote projection suddenly appeared in the Strategic Command Center. What do the three of you say now? Bruce and the other two had uncertain expressions, but they did not respond. Only when the World Tree's main body was exposed in front of the army would they have a chance to take advantage of it. Now, there was no chance. As for making Black Star hand it over voluntarily, the three of them knew what was going on. No matter how arrogant they were, they did not think they had that much face. Black Star, you've succeeded. You must be very happy now. Bruce's expression was complicated and his tone was sour. There's also a hint of unwillingness and mockery. Yes, I'm indeed very happy. The war is finally over, and everyone is cheering. Aren't you guys happy about this? Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. The three of them had solemn expressions. It would be strange if we were happy. Who knew if we had just left the tiger's den and entered the wolf's den? Seeing this, Han Xiao smiled and did not continue to provoke them. Anyway, he had already taken advantage of them, so there was no need to act innocent. There would be plenty of time to settle the score in the future, and he did not plan to argue with the three of them about what happened earlier. Now was not the right time. This time, Han Xiao changed the topic and said, "All right, let's not talk too much. Let's get down to business. I have a plan, and I hope you guys will cooperate." What plan? The three of them were surprised. We just won. What is Black Star up to now? Seal the news of us defeating the World Tree civilization and don't leak it out. The composition of this Galactic Alliance army is complicated, so it's best to control them for the time being. What are you trying to do? Bruce was confused. Han Xiao smiled and said, "Haven't you been investigating the matter? Haven't you guys been investigating who leaked the information? I said it was a third party, but you guys didn't believe me. Coincidentally, I obtained the technology of the Information Form Warning Network from the World Tree. I don't need to explain the effect. You guys have all experienced it. This way, we might be able to find traces of third party." The eyes of Bruce and the other two lit up. Chapter 1464. This suggestion was very constructive, and the three leaders immediately took it seriously. After thinking for a while, they quickly finalized the preliminary plan with Han Xiao and then asked the Strategic Command Center to withdraw the orders to the direct troops of the three universal civilizations. The goal of the three of them was to destroy the World Tree, not to fall out with Black Star on purpose. Although they were unwilling to accept that Han Xiao had subdued the World Tree, there was no point in arguing about this. Bruce and the others could only suppress the fear in their hearts and wait for the future to discuss a targeted plan. Anyway, there was nothing they could do now. They could not really start a second round of war with Black Star. Who won or lost was secondary. A third party might still be eyeing them in the dark. Even if they wanted to fall out, they should at least wait until they had a direct transcendent. Wernos was their greatest hope. He might even advance one day. The direct troops of the three universal civilizations stopped firing and retreated, silently withdrawing from the encirclement. The tense atmosphere quickly faded. The short confrontation between Han Shao and the three universal civilizations had stunned the soldiers of the Galactic Alliance Army. Realizing that the conflict between the two sides had reappeared, they were very nervous. They were afraid that they would have internal strife after winning and start another war. Seeing that both sides had stopped, countless people heaved a sigh of relief. No matter what kind of conflict there was, the three universal civilizations were the main force against the World Tree, and Black Star was the hero who changed the situation. They were all heroes in the war. They had just joined hands to defeat the enemy, and now they had turned against each other in front of everyone. It was hard to accept. No one wanted joy to turn into sorrow. However, the World Tree was not destroyed, but was subdued by Black Star. This reality made many people feel strange. Although Black Star had contributed too much to the war this last wave, it made them suspect that Black Star was using them to achieve his goal. Of course, that was the case. Black Star might have a reason for this, but the impression he gave everyone was still quite complicated. However, no one was too bothered by this. Very quickly, they threw this thought to the back of their minds. The conflict between Black Star and the three universal civilizations? That was a conflict between big shots, and it was not their place to worry about it. These frontline combatants only wanted to enjoy the ecstasy of victory and the joy of surviving a calamity. We won. May the Empire last forever. For a while, the battle channel once again rang with the cheers of countless soldiers. It was deafening. The officers did not stop them and allowed their subordinates to vent their emotions. In fact, they were also excited and could not help but celebrate with their subordinates. The other side, Han Shao removed the Supreme, Celestial Venerate. Retracting his troops, he passed by the direct troops of the three universal civilizations who had given up on stopping him and returned to the army of the Beyond Grade A organizations. The Beyond Grade as immediately surrounded him. That was close. I thought the three universal civilizations were going to insist. He didn't hesitate to start a civil war. Sun Hunter wiped his non-existent cold sweat. Kasui casually analyzed. That won't be the case. They still have a good grasp of the situation. We are clearly on Black Star's side, and Black Star has obtained the World Tree Civilization's troops. The three universal civilizations did not dare act recklessly. They knew what the result would be. I won't seek my own death. Speaking of which, isn't His Excellency Black Star taking too many risks this time? We didn't know about your plans beforehand. Some people muttered softly. Many association members looked at Han Shao strangely. These people did not know about it beforehand. Because there was a supercluster spy in the association, Han Shao did not want to leak the news in advance. So he only told Kasui and his other confidants about his plan to subdue the World Tree. To the entire association, it was to prevent the three universal civilizations from plotting against the World Tree. Therefore, not long ago, some of the association members were still in the dark. Even if they had doubts, they did not confirm it. They could only follow the original plan and cooperate with their teammates to trip up the direct troops of the three universal civilizations, buying time and creating opportunities for Han Shao. They did not dare to act recklessly. To be honest, if Han Shao had expressed his goal of subduing the World Tree from the beginning, many Beyond Grade would have felt that they might not have been willing to help him. They would have been more inclined to completely destroy the World Tree like the three universal civilizations. After all, the World Tree was quite similar to the underworld, but its power was one step higher. It could control the thoughts of individuals. Even if Black Star was temporarily one of them, who knew what would happen in the future? If one day, Black Star's ambition reached the limit and he wanted to use the World Tree to devour everyone, what would they do? In the past, Black Star did not have such thoughts because he had not obtained the World Tree. Many Beyond Grade had no choice but to consider their own safety from their own point of view, and they were secretly afraid. Seeing the complicated expressions on the faces of many beyond grade as, Han Xiao did not mind and smiled. He smiled and said, "Everyone, don't worry too much. I subdued the world tree for other reasons. One of them is to use the power of the world tree to make the three universal civilizations hesitate and consolidate the safety foundation of our beyond grade A association after the war. This way, the three universal civilizations will completely give up on suppressing us. Only then can we put down all our worries." Manison nodded slowly and agreed. "This is similar to what I thought back then. However, we were still young back then, and it was not the right time. My thoughts were too advanced. Now that our forces have expanded rapidly with the help of the war, the time is ripe. The strategic significance of the world tree is actually the same as the virtual mutiny virus, but it is more suitable as a strategic deterrent weapon to make the three universal civilizations not dare to attack us again." With that, Manison gave Han Xiao a look of admiration, as if saying, "We are indeed the same kind of people." He was also afraid of the threat Han Xiao would pose after obtaining the world tree. But if he were in that position, Manison would have made the same choice. How similar was the current situation to when he snatched the virtual mutiny virus from the tiger's mouth? However, he had failed, and Black Star had succeeded. Hearing this, no matter how unhappy some of the association members were, they could not say anything. The main reason was that what was done, and there was no point in objecting. Seeing this, Aurora changed the topic and said with a smile, "We won this war. Everyone, be happy." Hearing this, everyone relaxed and smiled. No matter what, this was the time to enjoy the victory. They still had to give face to their nanny. "We've finally dealt with this strong enemy. We could take a break. I've been so tired all these years. Don't wake me up until I sleep for a month." After enduring the difficult times, a beautiful tomorrow awaits us. The beyond grade as were relieved of their burdens, and they chatted and laughed with each other. At this moment, someone thought of something. "By the way, Black Star, when do you plan to revive the beyond grade as who died recently?" In the war in the past year, some more beyond grade as had died in battle. Han Xiao had not had the time to revive them, and their names were still hanging on the Soul Comfort Monument. "After a while, I still have some things to do, so I can't leave for the time being, especially the matter of establishing a civilization's regime. The timing, location, and people are all in our hands. I've convinced the three universal civilizations to temporarily track down the third party. Taking advantage of this buffer time, let our people complete the final preparations for the association's transformation. When the time comes, everything will be done in one go." Han Xiao replied casually. He took out the technology of the Information Form Warning Network and convinced the three universal civilizations to search for the third-party enemy. On one hand, he did not want the enemy to continue lurking and reap the benefits. On the other hand, he temporarily shifted the focus of the three universal civilizations and bought time for the association's final preparations. The two plans were carried out in parallel, killing two birds with one stone. This way, he would be busy, and he had to make the best use of his time. For the time being, he did not have the time to study how to complete the virtual creation. However, speaking of the Sanctum revival, Han Xiao thought of the problem of iterations. He had once planned to reveal the information of the Sanctums to the three universal civilizations at the right time and work together to study how to survive the iterations. In the past, the time was not ripe. Now that the world tree was in his hands, he truly had the foundation of an equal force. This plan could officially be put on the agenda. If he remembered correctly, there should still be a related mission lying in his interface. Because of the world tree's alchemy-like material transformation ability, he did not have to worry about collecting the materials for the Sanctum key in the future and could generate a new key at any time. To him, most of the Sanctums were his backyard, so he was not afraid of the three universal civilizations studying the Sanctums together. The other party did not have such unique conditions. This time, it's really a dragon riding on the face. Han Xiao was secretly overjoyed. The world tree mechanism, coupled with the sanctums, had unimaginable prospects. The two were a perfect match. He secretly decided that when the situation after the war completely stabilized, he would show his cards to the three universal civilizations and pull them to study the sanctums together. Instead of letting these people spend their energy on how to deal with them, it would be better to let them study how to solve the problem of the iterations so that they would not waste resources on internal conflicts. To be honest, I've definitely touched the galaxy. Han Xiao shook his head. I've really worried so much for the peace of the universe. It's not right if I don't get a few tons of medals. At this moment, Ames came over with a playful expression and said with a smile that was not a smile, "You've made a huge profit this time. The entire galactic society suffered heavy losses in the war, and trillions of lives died in the war. In the end, you became the biggest beneficiary. What do you think? What? Are you trying to wake me up from my shame? Then you found the wrong person." Han Xiao shrugged and said frankly, "I ended the war early and saved countless lives. The dead are gone, and the living are still alive. You're asking me what I think. Of course, I have a clear conscience." Ames shrugged. "All right, there's nothing wrong with thinking that way. After this war, you'll be extremely respected. You won't be as busy as before, right? How about it? Take some time to accompany me." Han Xiao was a little tempted and was about to speak. However, at this moment, Jatina suddenly appeared and interrupted with a cold snort. "Lady Dragon Emperor, the army commander doesn't have that much free time. Don't keep pestering him. It will only make him troubled." Hearing this, Ames raised her eyebrows and turned to look. Jatina also glared back, not to be outdone. Their gazes collided in midair, and the air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Han Xiao sensed a wave of killing intent, and the corners of his mouth twitched. He quickly flew to the side, not wanting to be involved in the battle between the two women. He saw the two women staring at each other. One of them was calm and dignified, while the other was aggressive, with obvious provocation in her eyes. Both of them did not back down, and neither of them cared about Han Xiao and ran away. "Sigh, it's all my fault for being too outstanding," Han Xiao sighed helplessly. He flew to the side alone, thought for a while, and took out the space-time amber of the Heart Tree King. After obtaining the World Tree, Han Xiao had completely understood the mechanism of the Tree King and the Tree God. He realized that the ancestral Tree King had left him a mess. The Beyonder's vestige had been completely burned, the crown had been completely shattered, and the military strength had been greatly depleted. The high-level combatants were almost completely wiped out, and the World Tree civilization could be said to have suffered a great loss. It would take many years for them to recover. However, Han Xiao did not mind. After all, if he did not beat the enemy to such a state, he would not have had the chance to subdue the World Tree. He understood that he could not have both the fish and the bear's paw. There is no need to be pretentious after obtaining the greatest benefits. However, Han Xiao originally had an idea. If the time and price were right, it was not impossible to sell Wernos a Beyonder's vestige in the future. Now, he could not give it to him even if he wanted to. Old Wernos had missed the chance to advance to the transcendent grade once again. Han Xiao could only say that it was fate. He was also very lucky. Right now, the only intact Tree King crown is on the Heart Tree King. "This guy has become the only seedling in my hands." Han Xiao shook his head and laughed. Although the members of the World Tree were brainwashed to be loyal, they were not puppets without self-awareness. They had independent thoughts and their own lives. His entry into the World Tree civilization did not affect these things. In other words, controlling the World Tree was equivalent to using his own will to replace the will of the Mother Tree. To the World Tree civilization, the two had the same meaning. Therefore, Han Xiao also needed to find someone to manage the World Tree civilization. Due to the waste of the ancestral Tree King, there was only one Tree King left in the World Tree for a long time. The Heart Tree King was the best choice. With this in mind, Han Xiao did not hesitate and removed the amber. Pop! The Heart Tree King broke free from the seal and retreated without another word. His entire body glowed, and he was about to self-destruct. After being locked in the space-time amber for so many years, the Heart Tree King regretted not being decisive enough back then. He had told himself countless times that as long as there was a chance to undo the seal, he would immediately free himself. However, just as he was about to self-destruct, the mental network of the world tree connected to him again. The message made the heart tree king suddenly stop moving, and his expression became extremely shocked. The world tree civilization lost? He quickly received the information in the mental network and finally understood the war process during the years he had been sealed. The ancestral tree king, the secret tree king, the fortitude tree king, the subduing tree king. They're all dead, along with the tree king crown. Instead, I became the last surviving tree king. The prosperous world tree army was blown away just like that. His familiar colleagues were all wiped out, and even the entire civilization belonged to someone else. He had a new master. After more than 10 years, things had changed. For a moment, the Heart Tree King was stunned on the spot. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. Han Xiao did not interfere with the Heart Tree King's acceptance of reality. At this moment, he said, "I believe you already understand why I let you out. I need you to help me manage the World Tree civilization. It might not be a bad thing for you. As long as you do well, you will be the only Tree King for a long time. I will not interfere with your management too much. You will be under one person and above billions of people." The Heart Tree King came back to his senses and looked at Han Xiao with a complicated expression. He did not expect that the culprit who had sealed him back then would become his superior the moment he woke up. Due to the World Tree's mind control, the Heart Tree King could not feel any hostility toward Han Xiao. "I understand. I'll follow your will." The Heart Tree King sighed and lowered his head to agree. He did not have the right to refuse. Han Xiao nodded and clapped his hand. The Heart Tree King turned into a green stream of light and entered his body, returning to the Mother Tree world. After doing this, Han Xiao turned around and looked at the excited crowd. He smiled and did not participate. Instead, he changed into the king and disappeared. Chapter 1465. While the Galactic Alliance army was celebrating, the upper echelons of the Supercluster Alliance were discussing the short confrontation between Han Xiao and the three universal civilizations, which made them excited. External pressure is the glue of the internal cracks. Now that the glue is gone, the rift between Black Star and the three universal civilizations will grow bigger and bigger. It's only a matter of time before they go against each other. However, unlike before, the Beyond Grade A organizations are now at their peak, and they have obtained the World Tree's inheritance. The three universal civilizations can no longer stop them. The Star Arc leader knocked on the table with an inexplicable look in his eyes. The upper echelons of the Supercluster Alliance were the same. Some were gloating, while others were worried. They discussed softly. The Galactic Society won the war, but the real benefits fell into Black Star's hands. Although the war is over, it's only the beginning of the reshuffling of the galactic structure. A new structure will be formed in the chaos. People like Black Star won't miss this opportunity. He has the reputation of a war hero, and the three universal civilizations can't stop him at all. This is the trend. Black Star has the World Tree, and his forces are expanding rapidly. He doesn't need to ally with us to be able to fight against the three universal civilizations. Will he still value our agreement? He should still. The World Tree's vitality is greatly damaged, and Black Star might not be willing to fall out with us in the short term. It's better to be able to get external help than to do it alone. Furthermore, based on his past actions, Black Star doesn't actually have the ambition to steal the ruling power, nor does he have the intention to unify the galaxy. Of course, the human heart is unpredictable, and this judgment might not be correct. It can only be used as a reference. On the other hand, the three universal civilizations have also suffered a lot. They don't want to fall out with Black Star. Sigh, I feel a little pessimistic. If there are no new external conflicts, Black Star and the three universal civilizations might fight in the future. From the perspective of the entire galactic society, we defeated the World Tree and obtained the spoils of war. This is the strongest stage in history, but the internal conflicts can't be resolved. Are we going to die by force? Don't talk nonsense. The three universal civilizations aren't really stubborn. As long as Black Star doesn't have the intention to dominate, the three universal civilizations will still give up on opposing him under absolute strategic deterrence. Accept Black Star as a member of the ruling circle. Two superpowers might be the new normal in the future. The group cautiously analyzed the possibilities of the future situation. The Star Arc leader listened for a while and muttered, "Under such circumstances, we should find a new way to deal with ourselves. The original agreement was for us to work with Black Star to fight against the three universal civilizations. However, it's different now. The three universal civilizations need to rope us into fight against Black Star even more. It's not appropriate to lean towards Black Star." "You mean working with the three universal civilizations?" "Of course not. What I mean is to cooperate with both sides. The three universal civilizations are going to challenge Black Star. We'll be a huge bargaining chip, and the three universal civilizations won't treat us with the same attitude as before. Their previous oppression will naturally be nullified. Will they lower their heads and beg us to join forces? This time, we can really use the proper way to obtain a chance to develop freely. Maybe the three universal civilizations can't wait for us to become stronger. However, we have to let the situation form a new balance, so we can't easily side with either side. Only competition can bring about profit and space, and we can't let any side monopolize and dictate." Indeed, let's not talk about the three universal civilizations. Black Star is also a dangerous person, representing individualism. If he ascends, he will definitely give the superclass more privileges. Let him lead the galactic society. Maybe not as good as the three universal civilizations. Plus, he has the world tree, so he's a ticking time bomb. At this point, someone suddenly sighed and murmured, "That's right. Black Star, oh Black Star. Such a person is too difficult to deal with. He's always looking for greater benefits and won't relax at any time. He's really someone who does big things." If the person leading the Beyond grade as wasn't such a person, the three universal civilizations might have suppressed them long ago. How could they have developed to this point? Hearing this, everyone sighed with emotion. The image that Black Star left them with was strong and ruthless, able to seize every opportunity to expand. Even if they put aside his individual strength, everyone was still afraid of such a person. When they were teammates, they could trust each other, but when they turned back into competitors, it was a torture. The news of the Galactic Alliance Army defeating the World Tree Civilization was temporarily sealed by the three universal civilizations and Han Shao. The quantum network base station that controlled the data entry and exit filtered out all information that might leak out. Because they were worried that it would be difficult to control the army after it was disbanded, the victorious Galactic Alliance Army temporarily stayed in the secondary dimension to recuperate. Regarding this order, the various troops were quite cooperative, but they could not be on standby all the time. Therefore, the plan to find the third-party infiltrator was a race against time. The players, on the other hand, were not restricted. The Galactic Alliance Army ended the war. Black Star subdued the World Tree event had long been recorded in the Galaxy Chronicles, and it was extremely popular. Han Zhao's heroic appearance of uprooting the World Tree filled all the forums. Although many players could not help but complain that they had watched another wave of cinematics, they were still very excited to be able to participate in such a big event. However, the players were only active on the forums, and the occasional news that was spread through the communicator was intercepted. Therefore, the Galactic Society had no idea about the victory of the Galactic Alliance Army. The situation that countless galactic residents saw was still when the World Tree evacuated the invaders. They were still shocked by this, and there were many opinions online. The Star Alliance spies, who could only gather information from the public network, naturally did not know about the defeat of the World Tree Civilization. They were still patiently waiting for the World Tree Civilization's big move, completely unaware of the impending disaster. Central Galaxy, somewhere in the desolate universe belt, the secret base of the Star Alliance spies. I wonder what the World Tree is planning. How long has it been since there's been any movement? I see that the Galactic Alliance army is hurriedly gathering in the central galaxy. The World Tree civilization is probably going to attack the central galaxy. Speaking of which, we're also in the central galaxy. Will we be affected? Should we evacuate? In the base, a group of observers gathered together and whispered. The captain of the observers hesitated and said, "The chances of the desolate universe belt being targeted by the World Tree are very low. No one has visited us for many years, so it should be safe. However, the World Tree might also send people to infiltrate and build some strongholds. That way, we'll also have the risk of being discovered. If we act rashly, we might be exposed. Other places might be more dangerous. Let's stay," a team member suggested. "That's fine too. If our base is really discovered, we'll activate the self-destruction program and sacrifice ourselves together." The captain's tone turned solemn. These observers who had infiltrated the territory of the three universal civilizations were all carefully selected death warriors. In order to not be captured and leak the situation of the Star Alliance, they had long been prepared to commit suicide. The self-destruction device they had buried was enough to blow up the entire planet and eliminate all traces. "You guys continue to pay attention to the news. I'll go sort out the information for this week and send it to my hometown in a few days." As he spoke, the captain stood up and was about to leave the room. Ding! However, all of a sudden, everyone's movements froze as if time had stopped. A certain space in the room fluctuated, and Han Xiao walked out. "Heh, it's the Lorcas." It's exactly the same as the illusion in the Bold Explorer. Looks like I found the right one. Han Xiao looked at the captain of the observers, and his eyes lit up. In order to prevent anything from happening, after he returned to the main universe, he consumed materials and used virtual creation to instantly create a temporary version of the information form warning network. He quickly installed it and set the parameters before officially activating it. He did not know if he did not use it, but the moment he used it, he was shocked. The information form warning network gave him a lot of abnormal signals. He thought that the entire explored universe was like a sieve being spied on by countless enemies. After some debugging, he finally understood that if this technology was used on a proper civilization, it would be very easy for it to produce false reports. However, the World Tree civilization was a whole, so there was no such problem. This was the difference in technology. The World Tree Express and the Information Form Warning Network were a perfect match. Although the three universal civilizations did not have such mobility, the multi-dimensional sky opening transportation device could be considered a substitute, so Han Xiao did not waste many days. After some screening and adjustment, he removed most of the false reports and confirmed some real external signals. Most of them were secondary dimension life forms. Han Xiao visited several signal areas and only now arrived at the base of the Star Alliance's spies. He immediately confirmed that this was the real deal. The process was much smoother than he had expected. Before he appeared, he had controlled the entire base and all the enemies. "Let me see what you're made of." Han Xiao's eyes lit up, and the image of the World Tree appeared behind him. As the World Tree merged with his internal space and was stained with Han Xiao's energy, the entire tree body turned into a bright blue color with electric arcs. A few translucent roots shot out like electric whips and pierced through the chests of everyone present. The next moment, the figures of these observers became illusory at a speed visible to the naked eye. Waves of energy flowed into Han Xiao's body through the roots. With the World Tree in hand, Han Xiao did not have any intention of interrogating these people. As long as he turned these spies into members of the World Tree, he would be able to obtain all the information from their memories and turn them into guides, imitating the methods of the World Tree. Not long after, these Star Alliance observers merged into the roots. Han Xiao snapped his fingers, and a few roots arched their bodies like snakes. With a puff, they spat out a large amount of sparks that flickered with electricity and condensed back into the bodies of a few people with respectful expressions. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and received the memories of this group of people. There was a lot of information about the Star Alliance in them. So that's how it is. The Star Alliance has been hiding for many years. Relatively speaking, this civilization doesn't seem to be very strong. Han Xiao pondered. The third enemy had been found, but he still needed to discuss how to deal with it with the three universal civilizations. He needed to see if he should destroy the Star Alliance or merge it into the explored universe. After all, although the Star Alliance was not strong, it had reached the standards of universal civilization. The three universal civilizations had suffered heavy losses, so they still had to consider the cost of starting another war. The three universal civilizations had been the targets of invasion previously, but now that they had the chance, they definitely would not mind switching roles seamlessly and becoming the invaders. After all, the Star Alliance was the one who had schemed against them, so they could not be considered innocent. The losses caused by the World Tree's full-scale invasion to the three universal civilizations would naturally be blamed on the Star Alliance. Han Xiao retracted his thoughts, sized up a Planetary Alliance spy, thought for a moment and said, "Continue hiding and maintain contact with the Star Alliance. Don't act rashly without my orders." "Understood. We will do our best to help you steal information from the Star Alliance." The spies were excited. Sigh, with the World Tree's mechanism, who would believe that they're not villains? Looking at the enthusiasm of these former Star Alliance men of sacrifice to deal with the Star Alliance, Han Xiaoxin shook his head and disappeared. Not long after, in the joint office of the three universal civilizations, Han Xiao brought the news of the third party being captured. "You're right. There really is a third party interfering. They've actually been hiding for so long. If not for the information forewarning network, it would have been very difficult for us to discover them in the future." Bruce and the other two looked at the information Han Xiao brought, and their expressions kept changing. Sometimes they were angry, sometimes they were relieved. With the evidence in front of them, they basically believed that the mole was not the supercluster or their other allies. After browsing through the Star Alliance's information, the three of them discussed softly for a while and came to a consensus. The Star Alliance is very far away from us, but once we obtain the spatial coordinates, we can use the multi-dimensional sky opening transportation device to teleport troops over, just like how the World Tree civilization dealt with us. Therefore, we have the initiative. We're inclined to defeat the Star Alliance and take them in as our vassal. However, let's not make a move for now. We've just experienced a war, and we still need some time to recuperate." Han Xiao raised his brows. "How long do you plan to recuperate?" Lewis pondered. "It depends. However, time is on our side. Although the information about defeating the World Tree civilization can't be sealed forever, you've already controlled the spies of the Star Alliance. You can use them to spread false information and fabricate the battle situation, making the Star Alliance think that we're still fighting the World Tree civilization. The premise is that the Star Alliance doesn't have any other means to monitor the galactic society." Han Xiao paused and said, "However, with the information forewarning network, we should be able to eliminate this possibility. Anyway, try not to alert the enemy," Bruce said with a deep voice. Han Xiao nodded, thought for a while, and suddenly said, "I'm not going to join the Star Alliance. The Association and I will not be joining the battle to invade the Star Alliance. You can deal with them yourselves. I'm only in charge of these spies." The eyes of the three of them flashed, but they did not express their stance immediately. They quickly analyzed it in their minds and felt that there were pros and cons. In this World Tree War, the three universal civilizations did not obtain any benefits in the first place. The World Tree civilization was taken away by Black Star, and they did not even see the shadow of any technology or resources. If they could annex the Star Alliance, they would be able to obtain some benefits. If Black Star did not participate in the battle, he would not share the spoils of war. Han Xiao controlled the World Tree, so his ability to snatch resources was top-notch. The three of them had no choice but to be wary. Without the help of the Beyond Grade A Association, the war would be more troublesome. However, the three universal civilizations were not to be trifled with. Even if they could not defeat the World Tree, they could still defeat a mere Star Alliance. However, the three of them were worried that Black Star or the supercluster would stab them in the back while they were fighting the Star Alliance. It was very risky. Who knew if Black Star had such a plan? For a moment, the three of them were in a dilemma. Han Xiao glanced at them and guessed most of their thoughts. He curled his lips. He helped the three universal civilizations because he had always been worried about the calamities in his previous life and wanted to resist the world tree. Do you still want me to help the three universal civilizations expand their territory? It's already good enough that I don't replace you. Be content, little brother. Now that the threat had finally been resolved, the Galactic Society would be able to enjoy many years of stability. Han Xiao was already satisfied. Ever since he descended, the world tree had been the sword of Damocles in Han Xiao's eyes. It was his biggest psychological shadow and the source of his anxiety. For a long time, he could only keep this secret by himself and work hard to solve it. He did not dare to relax, and the pressure was difficult to describe to outsiders. After persevering for more than 100 years, he had finally resolved the threat of the Galactic Society. He no longer had to worry about the safety of himself and his friends. He felt relieved and wanted to retreat behind the scenes and truly relax for a period of time. Chapter 1466. The capture of the Star Alliance spies made the three universal civilizations finally relax. They quickly returned to the fleet, no longer blocking the news, and started the propaganda machine with all their might. Very soon, the explosive news of the Galactic Alliance army defeating the World Tree civilization spread throughout the entire Galactic Society in the shortest amount of time possible. Countless galactic residents who were on the refuge planets were instantly blown up until their heads buzzed. Not long ago, we were still in a passive position, facing the full invasion of the foreign enemy. The future was filled with pessimism, and we were in a constant state of anxiety. However, before we were mentally prepared, the tables turned in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, they told us that the war had ended and everyone was safe. Brother, we just woke up. We haven't even brushed our teeth. The galactic residents were stunned. They could not believe it. However, as the official media of the three universal civilizations revealed the entire process of the war and confirmed that this was not a rumor, the entire galactic society recovered from the shock, leaving only boundless joy. Under the shadow of the World Tree civilization, the entire galactic society was forced to change, disrupting everyone's lives. Countless people turned from free and casual galactic residents to refugees escaping the flames of war. The wartime policy tightened the supply of resources and the rights of the people. The difference was huge, and this change had lasted for nearly 20 years. In the perspective of a civilization or a high-level super, 20 years was just a short period of time. It was just a small wave in the long river of time, but to an ordinary galactic resident, it was almost a generation. Any change in the era would be magnified on the individual. In the past, the three universal civilizations and the World Tree civilization were in a stalemate, and no one could see a clear future for the war. Countless galactic residents pessimistically thought that this kind of life would continue and tomorrow would not be better. At least 2 or 3 generations would have to suffer in the flames of war. However, at this moment of darkness, the dawn tore through the deep fog and shone into everyone's lives. This ray of light came from the countless soldiers who had sacrificed themselves at the front lines from Black Star, who had single-handedly turned the situation around. On the 17th of April, year 799 of the galaxy calendar, cheers that reached the clouds echoed on countless refuge planets. They came from different races and spoke in different languages. Countless galactic residents called this day the turning point of the era, representing the end of the war and the destruction of the World Tree. As the victors, the three universal civilizations received the praise of the entire galactic society. In their promotion, the three universal civilizations did not hide Black Star's achievements and wrote it as it was. Before the war broke out, he had been maintaining internal checks and balances to reduce internal friction. In the early stages of the war, he led the Beyond grade as to resist the enemy without any hesitation and personally took the risk to gather key information about the World Tree. During the preparation period, he focused on training the seeds with potential and nurtured a new batch of beyond grade as he guarded the shallow dimensions alone, causing the World Tree civilization to be unable to advance and have no choice but to give up this most dangerous battlefront for the three universal civilizations. He was the first to find the main body of the World Tree, forcing the World Tree civilization to give up on the invasion and single-handedly open the curtain of the final battle, turning the long war into the final battle. Too many achievements made Black Star's light in the war unable to be concealed at all. His presence was extremely strong. Countless galactic residents counted Black Star's contributions and were filled with admiration. The reverence that gushed out of their hearts was like a warm current that baked their hearts, and it was also like an uncontrollable trembling of their souls that penetrated every bone and every nerve. Although this was a little unfair to the normal soldiers who had sacrificed on the front line, after seeing Black Star's deeds from the beginning to the end, many galactic residents felt that the rhythm of the entire war was controlled by Black Star. He adjusted the general direction of the strategy, and the Galactic Alliance army was more like a tool that carried out his will, only responsible for carrying it out. Due to his huge contributions, Black Star became the publicly recognized chief war hero of the Galactic Society. His reputation soared, surpassing all previous records. He was truly like the sun in the sky, earning the respect of the entire Galactic Society and being fanatically sought after. The Beyond Grade has also shared a large amount of reputation and received countless praises, especially the famous sacrifices on the Soul Comfort Monument. They received even more respect and were very popular. Although before the World Tree War broke out, the Beyond Grade as were seen as the privileged class of the Galactic Society and had been viewed as enemies by many galactic residents. The Beyond Grade as had fought bloody battles on the front lines to protect their safety, and the galactic residents were grateful from the bottom of their hearts. Due to the wartime policy, most of the population of the various star fields have been gathered to different refugee planets. Now that the flames of war had been extinguished, the three universal civilizations had also begun to gradually move back batches of refugees, slowly leaving the state of war and returning to normal society. Central Galaxy, Aquamarine Federation's refugee planet. In a huge open-air landing plaza, teams of spaceships with the insignia of the Black Star Corps were parked neatly. The hatch was wide open, and the Blue Star people lined up in an endless line. Following the commands of the Army members, they nervously and excitedly stepped onto the starships that were returning home. Years of fear and uneasiness caused everyone's complexion to reveal a strand of haggard and exhaustion, but it couldn't conceal the smiles and relaxation that overflowed from their faces at this moment, and they were filled with anticipation for a beautiful tomorrow. In the office of the government building, the white-haired and wrinkled Bennett stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the crowd in the plaza. Seeing the haggard and excited expressions of the Blue Star citizens one after another, he could not help but sigh softly. The pain of war can only be healed by time. As he spoke, Bennett turned around and looked at the statue of Black Star, which was the landmark of the city, with a gratified look in his eyes. "Black Star, you really did it. I knew I could always trust you." Bennett smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. He had already seen through many things, but he was still proud to have an old friend like Black Star. At the same time, on floating Dragon Island above this refugee planet, a spaceship slowly drove into the dock and docked. The hatch slowly opened. Harrison walked out of the spaceship along the gangway and stepped onto the platform. With just a glance, his gaze locked onto Jenny, who was waiting there anxiously. As their gazes met, everything around them seemed to turn into nothingness. There was only each other in their eyes, as if a lifetime had passed. Harrison strode forward and spat on Jenny's shiny forehead before pulling her into his arms. Jenny only struggled symbolically for a moment before she hugged Harrison's back and whispered, "You still know how to come back." "Sorry, I had a reason to leave." All right, I'm not blaming you," Jenny interrupted him. "I'm just thinking, Black Star. If you hadn't found the World Tree's main body and completed what you wanted to do, you definitely wouldn't have come back." That's true. Harrison let go of Ginny and scratched his head embarrassedly. Ginny glared at him and said, "Speaking of which, you've also reached the sky in a single step. Now that you've gotten me, you're in-laws with Blackstar. Although I don't get along with Blackstar, I can't deny that he's already standing at the top of the universe. With him as your backing, you can do whatever you want in the future." This. Harrison was a little embarrassed and did not know how to answer. Ginny snorted, lowered her head, and touched her stomach. Then, she raised her fist and pretended to be fierce. "You have to treat me better in the future, okay? Otherwise, my sister and brother-in-law will find you and beat you up. Let's see if you can take it." Harrison shuddered subconsciously. Although he was not dating Ginny because of her identity, when he thought of the two gods in Ginny's family, he could not help but break out in cold sweat. Harrison felt that the more he talked about this, the more dangerous it was. He quickly changed the topic, coughed, and said, I'll stay on Floating Dragon from now on and accompany you." However, Ginny rejected, shook her head, and said, "There's no need to stay on Floating Dragon. I plan to resign and not be the general manager of Floating Dragon anymore." Harrison was shocked. "What's wrong? I've been working overtime for so many years, and I'm tired. Ims doesn't know how to manage, and I was worried in the past. Now that she's together with Blackstar around, she doesn't need my help anymore." Ginny's tone was complicated. She was still unhappy with Han Xiao, this B** star who had snatched her sister away, but it was not her place to object. As she spoke, Ginny paused and looked at Harrison. Her tone became gentle, and she became a little shy. "Besides, I know that you like to explore everywhere. I hope that you'll be happy with me. I can't unilaterally stop you from pursuing your hobbies just because we are together. So, in the future, can you take me out to explore?" Harrison was stunned for a moment. Then he was overjoyed and touched. "You're so good to me." He looked at Ginny's face, and his heart skipped a beat. He could not help but slowly move closer. Ginny's face turned red, and she slowly closed her eyes. Just as the two of them were about to touch, a deliberately loud cough sounded from the side. Ahem! Like a sudden clap of thunder, the ambiguous atmosphere was broken. The two of them woke up from their dream and bounced away like they had been electrocuted. Their faces turned red, and they hurriedly looked in the direction of the sound. They saw that Aesop had appeared beside the two of them at some point in time, and his eyes were looking at the two of them. "When did you come? You're already an adult. Don't you know that you shouldn't disturb others when they're doing something good?" Ginny was embarrassed and angry, so she took the initiative to fire first. Aesop could not be bothered with her. He walked up to Harrison and sized him up with a smile. He patted Harrison's shoulder hard and was very gratified. "Good lad. You're much more reliable than that B** starred Blackstar." Harrison knew Aesop, and he smiled bitterly. "Don't make fun of me. How can I be compared to someone with great achievements like Blackstar?" "Heh, why can't you be compared? At least in terms of reproduction, you've already beaten him by a step. If he had half your skills, I would have had grandchildren long ago. Blackstar is clearly a hothead, but he still pretends to be very powerful. I wanted to teach him my experience out of kindness, but he actually despised me." Aesop was angry when he said that, and he blew his beard and glared. Harrison did not know what to say. He said helplessly, "Stop fooling around. Blackstar is someone who does big things. Why would he waste his energy on such a small matter?" Small matter? Ginny's ears twitched, and she caught the key word. That's not what I meant. Before Harrison could finish his explanation, Aesop grabbed him by the neck and pulled him until he bent over. He chuckled. "I think you're much more pleasing to the eye than Blackstar. Let's go. I'll teach you a few moves. I guarantee that you'll be able to subdue Ginny. Hurry up and get lost. Don't disgust me." Ginny, who was beside him, had a look of disdain on her face. She kicked Aesop and pulled the reluctant Harrison away. Unexplored Universe, Star Alliance Capital. In the office, the leader of the Star Alliance, the leader of the Lore Civilization, Savines, and the leaders of the other Star Alliance member states were gathered. A virtual screen floated in front of everyone, displaying the same information. The Observer team has sent back this week's battle report. Has everyone seen it? The leader of the Star Alliance looked around and asked. Savines nodded and said with a smile, I finished reading it immediately. It seems like with our help, the three universal civilizations can't hold on anymore. Hearing this, many people smiled. The leader of the Star Alliance smiled and lowered his head to read the contents of the information. The World Tree Army attacked the central galaxy and focused on destroying the refugee planets, causing all the refugees on 1,783 planets to be sacrificed. The number of civilian casualties is estimated to be between 15 trillion and 25 trillion. The mother planet of the Radiant Federation was ambushed by a large force of the World Tree. The defense forces repelled the invaders with difficulty, but the mother planet was severely damaged. Although the upper echelons were fine, many middle-level officials and nobles died. The Galactic Alliance Army and the World Tree invaders engaged in a battle at the Silver Arm, but they were ambushed and suffered heavy casualties. 8 Beyond Grade has died on the spot. Due to the unfavorable battle situation and being suspected of being a traitor, the Supercluster Alliance activated the evacuation plan and did not want to continue participating in the battle. The three universal civilizations strongly objected, and the Galactic Alliance army was in turmoil, suspected to have broken off, although he had already read it once. When he heard the leader of the Star Alliance read it out loud, Savines could not help but smile happily. His heart was filled with the joy of revenge. Finally, the leader of the Star Alliance read through the intense battle situation that Han Shao had fabricated. He paused for a moment and said with a relaxed tone, It can be seen that the battle between the three universal civilizations and the World Tree civilization is extremely tragic. Furthermore, the Supercluster Alliance was schemed against by us and was misunderstood as a traitor who leaked intelligence. With internal and external problems, the three universal civilizations will definitely lose. As soon as he finished speaking, many of the people present revealed gloating smiles that did not lose their decorum. They were secretly delighted. Some of the Star Alliance members who did not support him initially had nothing to say. After reading this report, everyone came to a conclusion. The three universal civilizations were definitely living in an abyss of suffering. This was a sure win. Chapter 1467. Establishment of the Super's Holy Land somewhere in the explored universe. The Avengers' fleet was slowly moving. Inside the cabin, Penguin and the others were surrounding the virtual screen, watching the news of the three universal civilizations' victory. Looking at the joyous looks of the countless galactic races on the screen, the Beyond Grade as present had complicated expressions. Humph! The three universal civilizations have become the winners, and the galactic society has escaped a calamity. Penguin, are you satisfied now? A Beyond Grade, he stood with his arms crossed and said with dissatisfaction. Penguin was expressionless. There's nothing to be happy about. Is that so? But why do I feel like you don't mean what you say? Don't forget what our goal is. To be honest, if you've given up on revenge, you should disband as soon as possible. Another person said coldly. These people had been planning their revenge against the three universal civilizations. The Galactic Society was celebrating their victory, so of course, they could not be happy. They only felt annoyed. Facing Penguin, who was not firm enough, they naturally did not have a good expression. Penguin was unmoved and said calmly, If you had time to talk nonsense, you might as well think about your next move. You still have the face to say that? This war was clearly a good opportunity for revenge. If not for you insisting that we not use this as a pretext, we would have long. Black Star would have killed us long ago. Penguin interrupted him and slowly said, From the current results, the conclusion is that even if we cause trouble, we won't be able to change the outcome of the three universal civilizations winning. This is because the key factors that decide the war will not be affected by us at all. Therefore, if we take advantage of the war, we will be wiped out. You all have to be glad that I saved our lives. Hearing this, everyone was furious. Every time they talked about this topic, Penguin would use similar reasons to persuade them, and the key was that it was not easy to refute. At this moment, Penguin changed the topic and said, Also, Don't you think that this new situation of internal conflicts is a good environment for our development? The reason why I don't agree with causing trouble in the war is because I saw this. If the three universal civilizations lost, we wouldn't have to do anything. Now that they've won, they will form a new balance with the Beyond Grade A Association and the Supercluster Alliance after the war, and we will have room to maneuver. Therefore, what I've always emphasized is that we have to be forward-looking and foresee the changes in the future. We can't just look for a moment. Penguin's tone, Penguin everyone had strange expressions on their faces. This sentence sounds right, but it doesn't sound right coming from the mouth of a martial artist. After taking one last look at the galactic refugees in the news, Penguin turned around and left the room. When he turned around, the corners of his mouth faintly curled up a little, but then it disappeared. He said indifferently, "That's right. Don't look anymore. Let's go." Their joy has nothing to do with us. The migration of the refugees from the various star fields was in full swing. However, one day, an explosive piece of news once again caused a huge shock in the galactic society. On this day, the Beyond Grade A Association officially announced the establishment of a civilization regime called the Super's Holy Land. The Civil Association organization was upgraded to the Civilization Elders Association. All the Beyond Grade as of the association were members of the Elders Association, and a portion of them, represented by Black Star, were the main decision-makers. The nature of the civilization was one of the more common immigrant countries in the galactic society. They expressed that they would openly accept all the supers with good credit as citizens of the Super's Holy Land, regardless of race. The banner was building a resplendent country that belonged to the supers. The Beyond Grade as were the leaders of the superclass to begin with. They were like wind vanes, enough to guide a portion of people to join. Furthermore, Black Star was the only transcendent at the moment, so the attraction to the supers was even greater. Of course, there were more substantial benefits. As long as one became a citizen of the Super's Holy Land, they could obtain super knowledge of the various major systems from the official channels and apply for customized training programs to help them increase their grade. In addition, official citizens could also choose to enjoy the protection of the underworld. If they unfortunately died or died of old age, they could choose to continue living as heroic spirits. If they advanced to the Beyond Grade A realm, they would directly enter the Elders Association and enjoy the protection of the Sanctum Revival for free. Other than that, there were also various detailed rules and regulations, civil rights, and other provisions. They were jointly formulated by the professionals of the various Beyond Grade A organizations. They referred to the systems of many galactic civilizations and made adaptable changes. The location of the Super's Holy Land was in the flickering world, and almost half of its territory was taken away. There were also some star clusters that had not been fully explored, located at the outermost region of the explored universe. However, the territory was not limited to this. The desolate universe belt outside the border of the flickering world was also included in the territory of the Super's Holy Land. This had to be mentioned about the regurgitation mechanism of the World Tree, which could transform countless planets. The desolate areas could also be transformed into prosperous star fields. Therefore, the Super's Holy Land had obtained a territory that could continuously expand outward without any restrictions. The first batch of citizens were the races or civilizations under the jurisdiction of the various Beyond Grade As. They were migrating over, and the members of the various Beyond Grade A organizations were also close to the water. As long as they were willing, they could obtain the citizenship of the Super's Holy Land. If they were unwilling, they would not force it. These people built the framework of the Super's Holy Land. This was clearly taking advantage of the entire universe. Any civilization would face the risk of losing supers. However, the three universal civilizations did not stand out to object. Instead, they sent a congratulatory message to congratulate the establishment of the Super's Holy Land in the name of the Star Ocean Civilization General Court. At the same time, they accepted the Super's Holy Land as a new member of the Civilization Conference. The two sides had already reached an agreement. The Beyond Grade A Association would obtain the status of a civilization's regime after the war. The three universal civilizations had already contacted Han Shao during this period of time. Even if they were unwilling, they had no choice but to fulfill the agreement. The smooth migration of a small half of the flickering world and many Beyond Grade A races was all because of Han Shao. The three universal civilizations finally relented. Before the joy of victory in the war faded, the galactic residents had a new topic. The birth of the Super's Holy Land caused a heated discussion in the entire galactic society. Although many galactic residents had guessed that the Beyond Grade A Association would make a big move after the war, due to the lack of information, no one had expected the Beyond Grade A Association to make a move so quickly and with such a huge commotion. Ordinary people were only shocked and discussing, but the entire superclass was in an uproar. The Super's Holy Land was far more attractive to the superclass than any civilization. Just the two benefits of the underworld and the Sanctum revival were enough to move countless people. In addition, there was free public knowledge, free training, and a series of other benefits. After enjoying the taste of extraordinary strength, it was basically impossible for them to be satisfied with the current situation. Most supers had the ambition to advance further. The treatment of the Super's Holy Land was enviable, and they did not have to bear as many obligations as joining a Beyond Grade A organization. Although the supers had privileges in the galactic society, they also had all kinds of concerns. Under the tacit understanding of the advanced civilizations, many middle and low-level supers had to sell their lives in exchange for various resources and knowledge. This was one of the methods the advanced civilizations used to maintain the balance, lest the supers become an unstable factor in society. Now that the Super's Holy Land had shouted the slogan of establishing the Holy Land of Supers, it caused 1,000 waves. Batches of supers no longer hesitated and eagerly joined. Before the World Tree War, they might have been afraid of the authority of the three universal civilizations, afraid that they would be cut off from the galactic society. Just like how the three universal civilizations suppressed the Beyond Grade A Association back then, many people did not dare to join the Beyond Grade A organization. Now that the political status of the Super's Holy Land was recognized, Black Star was no longer the ordinary Beyond Grade A of the past. Everyone could see that the Super's Holy Land and the three universal civilizations had reached the same level, and it was impossible for them to repeat the same mistake. Therefore, many supers no longer had any worries. Even if the Galactic Society banned them, they could just live in the Super's Holy Land in the future. What was there to be afraid of? At the border of the flickering world, Han Shao floated in the desolate universe belt, his entire body burning with the power of the World Tree. Facing the pitch-black space, he waved his hands rhythmically as if he was leading an orchestra to play a symphony. Under his command, roots tore through space and slowly took root. At the same time, the ends of the roots seemed to be spitting bubbles, sprinkling planets in this galaxy, expanding the territory of the Super's Holy Land. Behind him, a group of Beyond Grade as were watching the scene of the planets moving with shock. No matter how many times they saw this scene, everyone was shocked and in awe. After a while, Han Shao finally finished modifying this area. He retracted the power of the World Tree, turned around, and flew to everyone. Maintained such a large territory for now. It should be enough. As long as you're happy. Everyone had mixed feelings and did not know what to say. Han Shao turned to look at Aurora and asked, "What does the Galactic Society think of the Super's Holy Land now?" About 120 billion supers have already applied to become citizens of the Super's Holy Land, and this number is still rising rapidly, Aurora said. It's a little small, but it's just the beginning. Many people are still hesitating. When we completely stabilize, the population will skyrocket. Han Shao nodded casually. During this period of time, he had been running around and talking to the leaders of various organizations. He reached a consensus and finally established the Super's Holy Land. Establishing a civilization was very complicated, and all kinds of structures needed to be perfected. However, Han Shao only needed to control the general direction and simple diplomacy. The details were filled in by the professional subordinates of the various beyond Grade A organizations. Because it was the general trend, even the three universal civilizations did not try to trip him up. The establishment of the Super's Holy Land was smoother than Han Shao had expected. From now on, the Beyond Grade as were officially unified. In the future, they could all carry the banner of the Super's Holy Land and move around in the universe. The structure of the Galactic Society had truly become a tripartite structure. Han Shao asked himself if he had fulfilled his promise to the Beyond Grade A Association. Many Beyond Grade as became the upper echelons of the Elders Association of the Super's Holy Land. Among them, Aurora was promoted by Han Shao to be his deputy, replacing Kasui's position. This personnel change received everyone's approval. In the entire Beyond Grade A group, only Aurora could convince the masses. This was also Kasui's own intention. He had originally planned to explore the unknown universe after the war, and Han Shao had also changed his position according to his request. Because Oathkeeper had also teamed up with Kasui, the Holy Covenant also had an empty position. Therefore, Han Shao let Baiger become the acting leader of the Holy Covenant and handed over the job to Oathkeeper. Baiger, on the other hand, did not mind being a mascot-like acting leader. However, Han Shao did not care much about the Holy Covenant anymore. After obtaining the World Tree that could convert resources, he no longer needed the Holy Covenant organization to help him collect the Sanctum Keys. The main reason was to fulfill his previous promise and leave a place for the Beyond Grade as who were willing to retire. Han Shao turned around and looked at Psyker, who was hiding in the crowd. He raised his chin and said, "The one with 7 eyes, haven't you always wanted to relocate your race? Move your star pupil civilization to the Super's Holy Land. No one will suppress you here." "Really? I don't believe it." Cisco expressed his strong doubts. Even today, his Black Star PTSD had not been cured. He kept feeling that Han Shao was up to no good. Han Shao secretly rolled his eyes and did not want to talk to him. At this moment, Hilbert led a group of direct revivers out of the crowd with a smile on his face. "Black Star, I wonder if the Super's Holy Land welcomes us." Hilbert had always had the idea of leaving the three universal civilizations and joining the Beyond Grade A Association. Now that the war was over and the Beyond Grade as had established a civilization, he had finally made up his mind. He brought some direct revivers who also felt that they did not owe the three universal civilizations to join the alliance. Naturally, he wanted the unlimited Sanctum revival guarantee. Seeing this, Han Shao smiled. The three universal civilizations are even angrier now. If you guys make such a choice, it might invalidate the retirement benefits that you guys exchange your lives for. Are you sure? It doesn't matter. We've all died for the three universal civilizations. We don't owe them anything anymore. It's time to live for ourselves. Hilbert smiled. In that case, the Super's Holy Land welcomes everyone. Han Shao nodded and sighed. According to this trend, the Super's Holy Land might really be able to capture all the individual powers in the universe in one fell swoop in the future. At that time, the Super's Holy Land would become a place that all supers yearn for. Almost all the naturally awakened civilian supers would gather, and the other civilizations would only have the supers nurtured by their direct descendants. From another perspective, this could also be considered to have increased the security of the Galactic Society, helping the various civilizations to consolidate their rule and creating a more stable living environment for the galactic residents. I'm indeed still concerned about peace. The three universal civilizations don't understand me. Han Shao shook his head and sighed, not embarrassed at all. Thank you for the 20,000 reward from Odd Jin's harem. End of chapter. Chapter 1468. This batch of former direct descendants who joined the Super's Holy Land was only a small number of people. Most of the direct descendants still chose to stay in the three universal civilizations, but even so, The difference between the high-level combatants of the two sides was even greater. However, Han Xiao was no longer afraid of openly poaching the three universal civilizations. Ever since he subdued the World Tree and ended the war, many problems have been solved. For example, the three universal civilizations had never given up on the right to spread the ultimate knowledge. The Super's Holy Land has become the temple of individual strength. This is the trend. The three universal civilizations know that they can't stop it, so they still compromise with me. Han Xiaoxin's eyes swept across everyone and suddenly locked on a carrot, Evans, and the other knew beyond great as. There was no need to emphasize Carrot and Evan's potential. Naturally, their future was limitless. However, because the World Tree War broke out many years earlier than in his previous life, they did not have enough time to grow. Even with his nurturing, this missing time was still not easy to make up for, and they were far from reaching the theoretical peak of their abilities. Therefore, in this war, the two of them did not perform too well, but it was undeniable that they were still worth nurturing in the future. From Han Zhao's point of view, since the Super's Holy Land had shouted the slogan of the Holy Land of the Supers, it had to show the characteristics of connecting the past and the future. It could not produce a gap in the generation of experts. Although the current peak beyond grade has had a long lifespan and enjoyed a reputation, it was impossible to not have a new generation of experts in the future. They had to let the Galactic Society see the individual strength-nurturing ability of the Super's Holy Land that surpassed any organization. Although there might not be any opportunities to make a move in the future, they still needed the new generation of experts to hold down the fort for the Super's Holy Land. Han Xiao had already regarded Carrot and Evans as the future pillars of the Super's Holy Land. The work of remodeling the territory was completed. Secret Master and the other mages summoned the teleportation gate and sent everyone back to the main planet of the Super's Holy Land. The main planet of the Super's Holy Land was called the Star of Gods, and it was located at the back of the flickering world. There were statues of all the beyond grade as of the Civilization Elder Association. The lineup was luxurious, and among them, Black Star statue was the tallest and most eye-catching. It was the landmark of the entire planet. Countless spaceships gathered on this planet from all directions, leaving behind streams of light that were like resplendent galaxies hanging upside down. Were these supers who chose to join the Super's Holy Land? They had come to pay their respects to the statues of the various beyond grade as. This area was originally a defensive line built by the Galactic Alliance Army. But after the war, all the station troops were withdrawn. This area had a new owner. Every beyond grade has a residence here. After everyone returned, they scattered in twos and threes. They had gone to do their own things. Now was the time to move their respective forces to the territory of the Super's Holy Land. Most beyond grade were extremely busy. Han Xiao returned to the office. Aurora, Hela, Fu Ding, and the rest of the Black Star Corps came over and had a small meeting. The framework of the Super's Holy Land has been built. All that's left is to fill it in. There are some personnel changes that need to be explained to everyone. Say, Han Xiao scanned everyone. His gaze fell on Nero as he continued. As the supreme leader of the Super's Holy Land, it's not suitable for me to continue leading the Black Star Corps. Nero, the army will be temporarily handed over to you. Hearing that, everyone turned to look at the dumbfounded Nero with different expressions. That's not appropriate, right? I'm not mentally prepared. Nero was shocked. He stammered. Why, you started from scratch and only built the foundation today? You're handing it to me just like that? I'm afraid I can't bear the responsibility. Han Xiao raised his brows. He scolded. What the hell are you thinking? I'm only letting you be the acting Legion commander. On the surface, I'm just a figurehead. Nominally, I won't interfere with the daily affairs of the Legion, but you still have to report to me. Now that he had become the supreme leader of the Super's Holy Land, he needed to avoid suspicion from the outside world. If he continued to lead the Black Star Corps, it would be easy for others to have thoughts about it, and it would also be easy for the army to be inflated. Although Han Xiao was not afraid, he would avoid it if he could. It just so happened that he wanted to relieve some of the burden and relax. After all, with his transcendent grade and the power of the world tree, he no longer needed an external force to support his position. It was a good opportunity to let go of his authority and reduce the burden. Then I'm relieved. Nero heaved a sigh of relief. It was not his fault for being afraid. There were too many beyond grade, as in the army. Although he was Black Star's godson, he still could not hold the fort. Furthermore, the brand Black Star Corps was already famous throughout the universe. It stood too high, and Nero was afraid that he would lose his reputation. However, if it was just a part-time job, it would be much better. Han Xiao turned to look at Aurora and said, "It's the same for you. Now that you're the second in command of the Super's Holy Land, don't continue to be the deputy army commander of the Black Star Corps. Let's do the handover later." Aurora was unwilling. What happened to the promise that as long as I'm willing to stay, I can always stay in the army? Han Xiao shook his head and laughed. Your current identity is not suitable. You have to take on the burden alone. Even if you're not in the army, our relationship will not change. As the saying goes, people walk towards the top. The Black Star Corps is just a stage in your life. It's already over. Humph, big liar. Aurora turned her head to the side. Han Xiao was helpless. He turned to look at Hela and asked, "What about you? Have you considered what I told you? Do you want to take on the position of Minister of the Super's Department?" "Sure." Hela nodded lightly. "All right, then you and Aurora can hand over your position in the army together." Han Xiao nodded. The Super's Holy Land was divided into 5 important departments based on the 5 super systems. They were led by the corresponding beyond grade and had great authority. Hela's performance in this war was obvious to all. Coupled with the characteristics of the underworld, no one had any objections to her being in charge of the Super's department. Originally, Han Xiao wanted Manison to be in charge of the mechanic department, but old Manison refused. He had no choice but to settle for the second best and let Kant take charge of the mechanic department. The mage department was managed by Milizaus, and his deputy was Secret Master. The pugilist department head was Serene, and Han Xiao planned to replace him with Carrot in the future. The best candidate for the psychic department was originally Kasui, but he had to go on a long trip, so he replaced him with a peak psychic beyond grade who had been following the association for a long time. Fu Ding was the deputy. After a series of personnel changes, the upper echelons of the Super's Holy Land were distributed to the various meritorious officials. Many of them were former members of the Black Star Corps. Han Xiao asked them to hand over all their positions and did not force them to use the army camp to bind these people. Although these people did not mind following him, they still had to give him face. As the upper echelons of the Super's Holy Land, it was not good to keep the title of Deputy Army Commander. It would also make it seem that the Black Star Corps controlled the decision-making power of the civilization and was too domineering. Although he had the qualifications to be a dictator now, there was no need to show it. On the surface, a group of beyond grade had left, making it seem like the upper echelons of the Black Star Corps had lost their combat power, but in reality, it did not make much of a difference to Han Xiao. In the past, he wanted to gather a large number of experts to strengthen the Black Star Corps, but now he had to subtract them. His status had changed. These beyond grade were not in the army. It did not mean that they did not listen to him. At this moment, Hela crossed her arms and said straightforwardly, "You have to teach me how to enter the transcendent grade. I can't teach you now. Let's talk about it when you reach the bottleneck." Han Xiao waved his hand. He arranged the positions of the many beyond grade as in the army one after another. After dealing with the last person, he thought for a while and looked at Aurora. "By the way, release Sorokin. I have something to talk to him about." Aurora curled her lips, but she still did as she was told. Balls of gentle golden energy condensed into a physical body and gradually turned into Sorokin's appearance. Sorokin opened his eyes and looked around. Finally, his gaze landed on Han Xiao. He asked in confusion, Isn't the war over? Why are you calling me out?" Han Xiao rubbed his knuckles and said, "I have a good thing for you here. As long as you're willing to make a deal with me and not cause trouble, I'll allow you to not return to the underworld and continue to act outside." Hearing this, Sorokin had a suspicious look on his face. "When did you become so good to me? Tell me, what do you want me to do?" The Beyond Grade A Association has established a civilization and regime called the Super's Holy Land. I'll tell you the details later. I hope you can become an upper echelon in the economy or business field and display your strengths. How about it? Are you interested? There's such a good thing. Sorokin's eyes lit up. "Just tell me if you're willing." Han Zhao's tone was casual. Of course, the Super's Holy Land did not lack economic professionals, but Sorokin was the best at making money among the Beyond Grade, as after all, Han Zhao felt that it would be a waste of his talent to leave him in the underworld. It was a pity, so he might as well get Sorokin out and let him do what he could. Anyway, with his current status, he was no longer afraid of Sorokin causing any trouble. "No problem, don't worry. With me around, I'll definitely make the economy of this Super's Holy Land prosper, grow bigger, and create more glory." Sorokin immediately agreed. He had nothing to do in the underworld all day long, so of course, he would not reject such a rare opportunity to relax. As for the grudge with Black Star back then, Sorokin had already accepted his fate over the years. He was a smart person and would not keep brooding over it. Han Zhao nodded in satisfaction. Just as he was about to say something, his communicator suddenly rang. Beep, beep, beep. He took a look and saw that it was a call from the dynasty's ruler, Bruce. Han Zhao waved his hand and gestured for everyone to leave. After everyone left, he picked up the call. "What's the matter?" "Black Star, we plan to hold a grand ceremony on January 1st, year 800 of the galaxy calendar, to celebrate this victory, pay tribute to the lives sacrificed in the war, and award the meritorious officials. Your Super's Holy Land should participate in it too, especially you. The entire galactic society regards you as a hero. Don't be absent. I'll be there." Han Zhao nodded. This war was indeed worthy of the three universal civilizations holding a grand ceremony, and the date chosen was also very meaningful. The first day of the new century. This date was probably specially chosen to make it easier for the students to recite. After casually chatting for a while, Han Zhao told Bruce about the choice of Hilbert and the others. Bruce's reaction was very calm, as though he had expected it. It was a pity that Han Zhao could not see how exasperated the other party was. After hanging up, Han Zhao calculated the date. There's still half a year left until the ceremony. This time is enough for the Super's Holy Land to gain a foothold. After the ceremony, there will be a lot of free time. I'll enter the sanctum again and revive those old unlucky fellows who died in battle. At the same time, I'll figure out all the information on the sanctum's message board. Because the World Tree had solved the problem of the sanctum's key, Han Zhao naturally thought of a plan, which was to use this point to continuously enter and exit the sanctum and unlock all the information on message board. In theory, this operation was completely feasible. However, this would take a lot of time. Han Zhao decided to wait until the new situation stabilized before implementing it. Speaking of which, I wonder what the players have been doing recently. Han Zhao opened the interface and looked at the players' forums. Most of the topics discussed were related to the victory of the war and the Super's Holy Land. Now that the war was over, the players were free. Although Han Zhao had put up the World Tree War Dungeon Crystal series, most of them were still in a state of idleness. They had just completed a world main storyline mission, and many people could not bring themselves to do the side quests for the time being. In addition, the 5th Pro League was already in the preparation stage, which attracted the attention of the players. Therefore, Han Zhao did not have to worry about the players having nothing better to do. The universe is peaceful, society is stable, everything is getting better. TSK, TSK. It's been a long time since I've been so relaxed. Han Zhao exhaled and felt refreshed. An indescribable sense of satisfaction appeared. On the other side of Star of Gods, in Manison's mansion, Manison casually played with the cards and looked at Kasui, who was thinking hard about his cards. He casually said, "You've already decided to go on a long journey and found a new goal in life. I haven't congratulated you yet. I've lived for a long time, so I have to find something to do. There are basically no secrets in the explored universe to me. Searching for the unknown is fun. Kasuyi casually played a card and smiled. However, speaking of which, I didn't expect you to reject Black Star's invitation and not take charge of the machinery department of the Super's Holy Land. You took the initiative to give up this position of real power. Aren't you the same? Madison did not comment. I don't want to take up a position because I'm going on a long journey, but you're staying here. Why don't you want this power? This isn't like you. Kasuyi raised his eyebrows. I have other arrangements. Madison glanced at the card game and took out a card to play. However, after thinking about it, he stuffed the card back and changed his hand to play. He did not stop talking and said, I plan to go into seclusion and research for a few decades. I don't want to be distracted elsewhere. Besides, with Black Star around, I'll never be able to surpass him in the eyes of a mechanic. Indeed, Kasuyi sighed. It's the misfortune of all mechanics to be in the same era as him. Madison looked up at him and knocked on the table. You're not a mechanic, so why are you so emotional? To be honest, if I were you, I would have directly acknowledged Black Star as my teacher. It's not embarrassing to learn knowledge. Kasuyi shrugged. You talk too much. Hurry up and play your cards. Madison snorted coldly. Although his relationship with Han Xiao had eased up a lot, and he was willing to listen to the other party's orders to a certain extent, for him to lower his head again? Absolutely impossible. The establishment of the Super's Holy Land established the new situation after the war. After the initial observation, a large number of Supers from different civilizations poured into the territory of the Super's Holy Land from the various star fields and obtained official citizenship after being approved. The efficiency of a beyond grade A organization was famous for being high. With the rapid implementation of various aspects, the Super's Holy Land had only been established for a few months before it began to operate efficiently. On the other hand, the entire galactic society had yet to recover and still needed a lot of time to adapt to the new situation. The Supercluster Alliance also used the birth of the Super's Holy Land to get rid of the suppression it had always been under. It finally enjoyed the treatment of a normal advanced civilization and obtained a certain degree of freedom to develop. After the war, the situation gradually stabilized. The entire galactic society was working hard to adapt to the changes after the war. In the blink of an eye, it was the end of year 799 of the galaxy calendar. The celebration ceremony held by the three universal civilizations was held as scheduled. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.